Besides, level 8 or level 9 technocrats were likely deployed monitoring the situation. That only made things worse. So, Varian simply went back to Earth. He resisted the urge to send the message, "I am alive," like last time. With the power of Sovereign Creo and Sovereign Julius, the comms of his friends might be monitored. No. He was pretty sure they were monitored. Anyways, Sarah would return to the academy along with Evander. He could talk to them then. Then, he could sneak into Sarah's home. Only she and Anna lived there, and Varian also considered it his second home. But meeting Evander was too risky. There were several guards in his residence and Varian didn't trust them one bit. There was a high probability that at least one of them was a spy. He knew clearly why the Sovereigns decided to end him off. They were scared of his talent. They must have already known his rapid progress. Most likely, the Xanders. After all, they knew him from Sia a year ago. Perhaps they recorded his info and only recently found it. They know my awakening time is at least 2 months and at most 1 year. I knew my high profile would cause them to investigate me, but Xander's having my past information because of Sia, it slipped my mind. Now, if they knew he was alive, it'd endanger the safety of Sarah, Kyle and Maya. This sucks. He sighed as he reached Earth and sneaked into a mid-dungeon. Without wasting time, he entered a remote region in the core area and picked a few level SXS armored lions to fight. As his sword danced and slayed the low-level 6 beasts, his mind was consumed by thoughts. Sarah, I didn't see you after she talked with her father. Did you get shed your fears? Will you finally accept that it's not your fault? Varian muttered as he jumped into the air and covered a spear with lightning. Like the god of thunder, he threw the bolt with his enormous physical strength. Boom! Boom! The spear broke the sonic limit and pierced through the eye of the massive beast, ending its life. Varian's mind wasn't on the battle though. He just wanted to vent the uncomfortable feeling in his heart. It was growing with his every moment, with every second. Roar! The air shook as the armored lion's roar reverberated, and Varian roared back. Arg! Damn it! The space around the armored beasts distorted and the next moment, Varian appeared in front of them and punched them to pieces. They must be worried. Master would be fine. Richard, he was acting a bit strange, but he'll also be fine. But Sarah, arg, fucking damn it. Boom. Boom. Sarah would be sad. Varian remembered how she cried after seeing he was alive. Varian didn't understand why she was crying back then, but now he could tell. If he suddenly woke up to the news that Sarah died, he'd be devastated. Varian tried to think what he'd do if it really happens, but his mind went blank all the time. A world without Sarah would be empty. Who would talk to him? Who would smile at his jokes even if they weren't funny? Who would drag him to lunch if he tried to skip? Who would say, "I'll beat you"? But worry if he gets injured? Whenever he was down, who would ask him, "Why are you sad?" Who would share his joy with him? In a world without Sarah, a part of him would be lost forever. If Sarah was feeling the same way. Arg. Xanders. Creo. Varian kicked the ground and jumped a few miles into the air. His figure disappeared midway and he appeared in front of a massive spider. It was a mid-level 6, but Varian wasn't in the mood to care. Come. He raised his fist and punched down. Screech. The spider made a shrill noise and pierced at him with one of its legs. Boom. Varian was blown away the moment their attacks connected. A huge hole was formed in his palm, and blood gushed out like there was no tomorrow. But he didn't care. Zap. Caw. Covering himself in lightning and space armor, Varian dashed forward. He needed to vent or he might really go crazy. Sarah, are you feeling the same? 2 days have passed since Varian's death. Sarah didn't remember much. After waking up, she went to her father and stared at him. Perhaps it was out of hope. Or perhaps out of sheer desperation. He only said, "I'm sorry." Sarah understood. He knew the culprit but couldn't deal with them. Sarah didn't demand him for answer, nor did she yell at him in frustration. She simply thanked him and went back to her room. If her father, a peak level A9, couldn't deal with the opponent, then it must only be a sovereign. And she was a dual awakener, destined to never be a sovereign. She should just give up and wait for someone to avenge Varian, right? No. Sarah clenched her fists and her body started shaking. Her heart was aching and tears threatened to break out at any moment. Even if she closed her eyes, all she saw was him. It was as if he was a part of her. And she, a part of him. Sarah touched her heart and closed her eyes. She remembered asking Philia, "How is love different from camaraderie? You fight together, you trust one another, and you can die for each other." She didn't know then, but the intense heartache told her that she now knew what love was. She understood it. No. She felt it. She didn't know when it started. Perhaps when he saved her in the dungeon despite all his injuries. He had every excuse in the world not to risk his life, but he did. Perhaps what she felt then was mostly guilt and was driven by it to avenge him. But as she spent more time with him, at some point, something happened. She started to love spending time with him. She laughed at his little jokes, even though they were bad sometimes. She wanted to see him every day. She wanted to see him happy. She wanted him to be safe. If I can see him just once more, I am willing to sacrifice anything else. Sarah looked up at the sky and said in a low voice. Her eyes were puffed up and her body was trembling, but the determination in her voice was beyond doubt. "If gods really exist, please grant me this wish. Please let him be alive, I can die instead of him. Varian, why did you leave me alone? I am in pain, I can't stop the sadness. Please, just once, let me hold you. Drip. Drip. Wah. Pee please, P.Lease." Sarah covered her face and wailed. It's all my fault, if I didn't give you, that information." Minutes turned into hours, and when she had no more tears to shed, Sarah blankly reached her home in the academy. She didn't speak a word, nor did she cry again. But she didn't respond to any words nor express anything. Her face was emotionless and her eyes were lifeless. Her heart died with him. "I'm sorry about the release schedule. I was going through some issues. I'll fix the chapter release timing back to an hour or two after reset." From the next chaps. Second, spending so much time and effort only to realize he didn't get a single clue of what Sia went through in the academy. Third, he hated that fog blocking his memory. He felt its presence in the back of his mind. It was subtle but absolutely unbearable. These three pushed him into a state of rage and he finally broke out. Varian never thought he'd feel this, but he was actually happy that Narcissus died. He imagined the pain Julius would go through, if that monster felt any pain. Ha ha ha. Julius, you deserve it. He laughed, praising the karma. But after laughter came fear. If they try to kill Sia like they tried to kill me, would she be safe? Would Enigma put her life on the line for Sia? The moment this thought was born, it spread like a wildfire. Varian realized that even if Sia was really in danger, there was nothing he could do. Given their state of the relationship, he couldn't convince her. He was helpless and he absolutely loathed this feeling. He lived with it for an entire year after Amanda's death, and after he awakened, he swore to himself that he would never be helpless again. Despite the obstacles he encountered, he kept moving because he believed everything would be fine. But now, if by the time he grew stronger, what if something happened to Sia or Sarah? His thoughts grew erratic and Varian slaughtered his way through the dungeons. The dungeons he visited all had beasts in body path. So he was immersed in close combat. He fought till he was exhausted. Rested in the ghost ship. Ignored Boo's words. And fought again until exhausted. He lost the number of creatures he killed. 10, 20, 30, 50, 100. His rage was already numbed and his rage went from searing hot to deathly cold. Finally, he stopped. After 48 hours of the mad killing, Varian loosened his fists. He sat on the top of a mountain in the middle of nowhere and looked around. The plains that used to be light yellow were now dyed by the blood of different colors, painting a poignant scene. On the beautiful plains were corpses littered all over. Not a single corpse was complete. Just what did I do? Varian questioned himself as meanwhile the sensations of his body returned and he finally started taking in what he had just done. His body was long covered in the blood of the creatures. Red, green, blue, they all mixed onto him. It might have looked like he was cosplaying, but the intense killing intent he emitted negated any such thought from popping up. It was scary enough to directly kill a normal person. Level 1s would find it hard to even move under his killing intent. Even enemies of his same level would feel the pressure should he release it. After all, his killing intent was built on the deaths of countless low-level SXS, and even mid-level SXS. I do owe them one. Varian exhaled deeply and the next moment, he was already in Ghost Ship and started showering. The cold water washed away the reeking blood and his rage. With each passing second, Varian's mind cooled a bit more. Finally, he set apart his emotions and started to think. My 3 main concerns. Clear up my memory so that I can meet Sia. Don't get Sarah into trouble because of me. Grow stronger and kill those 2 bastards. He said out loud and after a while, deeply sighed. It all comes to strength, eh? A wry smile formed on his face. He was getting used to things going his way so far and this sudden change took him by surprise. Varian wasn't pleased and before he knew it, various factors pushed him into a fit of rage. Master, Boo's voice sounded. I'm bathing, damn it, Varian said and got into the bathtub. Leave me alone. Phew, you're finally back to normal. Boo sighed in relief. Varian's mouth twitched. An awkward silence filled the room except for the water sounds. What instructions did I give? Varian finally asked. He clearly remembered nothing. It was like being drunk and forgetting everything you said or did. Boo's embarrassed voice sounded. Just before you went insane, Kraz, angry, you asked me not to follow any of your important decisions until you got normal. Oh. Varian nodded in approval. As expected of himself. Though he didn't remember saying that, taking credit for his own work wasn't a problem, right? After you flew into range, you gave 500 orders in total. 200 were to try killing everyone in the Xander family. 200 were to kill or kidnap everyone related to Creo Bell. You also spoke of a few plans to torture Xavier Bell in front of him. And 100 were asking to investigate Sia and Sarah. They also included times when you wanted to inform everyone that you're alive. My past is an idiot. Varian immediately separated himself and threw his past self under the dust. Yes, Master. You gave 500 orders in 2 days, right? Did you do anything? Varian asked in anxiety. Nope. Now I can. Would like me to? Nope. Varian hurriedly said. Then where are we going now? Enigma's place, Varian answered after serious thought. He opened a spare comm and sent a message to Enigma. Boo was taken aback. But it didn't object and nodded. Good. After he met Sia, he had a talk with Enigma and she eventually gave him her contact. He didn't think it'd be useful. I need to speak to you. Dreamer. He thought he'd need a few hours to wait, but it was quickly answered. I just attended your funeral. Are you coming back from the dead? 3 hours. I'm hunting some bugs. We'll meet in Old Place. The ghost ship took off and dashed towards the secret realm. Once I meet with Enigma, then I can meet up with Sarah. Varian sighed. After thinking things through, he realized Sarah wasn't in any great danger. It was actually Sia. Yes. It's organized by Richard. Kyle, Maya, and many others came. Boo's voice paused. And Varian had bad premonitions. Kyle tried to add new stuff to the epitaph. He claimed that you'd come back to life to destroy your own tomb. So he insisted on adding weird stuff. Varian really wanted to beat up the guy. But thankfully, Richard didn't listen. Or Master, the whole world would know that you died a single. Ashtar also came along with Misa. Williamson. Philia. Dhruv and Mia too. But what? Sarah didn't come. Varian's eyes narrowed. Master, we can make an announcement posing as the dreamer. She would know. Boo suggested. Varian shook his head with a wry smile. She's probably deep in practice. Like Kyle and Maya from last time, they didn't even use their comms. She'd do the same. Speaking of them, are they all right? It was a stupid question. No. But after talking to Anna for a bit, they no longer looked as pale. Varian raised a brow. What did she say? She played a recording of yours. A hologram played out in front of Varian. In it, Varian was seated on a coach. He had a rather withdrawn aura and spoke with an embarrassed yet proud smile. Actually, I frequently encounter near-death situations. That Varian scratched his cheek and said. I kinda die almost every time. But somehow, I come out alive. You could say I'm tougher to kill even than those cockroaches. Listening to the words of his past self, Varian coughed awkwardly. Even though they didn't show it, perhaps Kyle and Maya too noticed he was special. Kyle and Maya were some of the people who knew when his awakening truly was. But they strictly guarded his secret. Perhaps they thought I could survive because of my secrets. They left with hope. But Sarah, she likely had no hope. Even though she knew he was Dreamer, he needed to react before the attack came. Moreover, she didn't understand the full extent of the ghost ship's capabilities. Sigh, I'll meet her soon, but now, Varian took a breath as the ghost ship quickly broke into a secret realm and reached a special residence. A plain white home that seemed too normal for the residence of the leader of Shadow Guardians. Varian still had a few hours before Enigma arrived. He didn't want to just wait. Not after what he went through. Boo, those guys, are they well prepared? He stood up and asked. Yes. Their strength is now suppressed to low level 6. Boo reported. During shopping with Sarah, he caught 3 Shadow Order members. Now, it was time for them to be useful. Schwa. Blue walls enclosed him, forming a training room, and soon, 3 men walked towards him in uniform footsteps. Their faces were fierce, but their eyes lacked any sense of clarity. You did a good job, Boo. Varian praised. The space inside the ghost ship expanded and the training room grew in size. Attack. Following Boo's words, the 3 men attacked him simultaneously. The space around Varian fluctuated, a huge lightning dragon shot at him. Following the 2 was the 3rd man. He kicked the ground and pulled his arm back. In the next moment, he appeared in front of Varian and punched them. Boom! His punch broke the sonic limit and was about to hit Varian. But Varian had no fear on his face. All he had was excitement. Despite fighting for 2 days, only his body path progressed. Besides, fighting magic beasts was considerably easier than fighting humans and abyssals. And if things did go the way he planned, he'd have advanced to level SXS in at most 2 paths by the end of the session. Come. Varian tensed his calves, twisted his torso, and punched out. At the same time, the space around his stomach was on the verge of exploding. It was barely stopped by his own space power. The lightning dragon was contested by his own smaller lightning dragon but assisted by telekinetic power. Boom! The space near his stomach exploded, and in the next moment, Varian felt like something had eaten him. Caw! He looked down and saw a gaping wound on his abdomen. A chunk of his flesh was missing. Rumble. The lightning dragon struck him at the same time as his fist connected with the body awakeners. Boom! With his feet stuck to the ground, Varian was pushed back. Attack! He yelled without bothering to wipe the blood dripping from his mouth. He could feel it. 2 bottlenecks were loosening. Roar! For the next 2 hours, lightning dragons and space blasts filled the room as punches exceeding the sonic limit were thrown around too many times. This well-coordinated gang of 3 foot, allowed to use low-level 6 power. But even then, they remained a force to reckon with. But using his hard power advantage, Varian went from being suppressed to suppressing them. With each attack, he instinctually judged how their space power and lightning mana were used. He tried to copy them and use them for his own. When they didn't fit, he modified them, and slowly, he was getting a hang of it. With each such step, his bottleneck was being quickly thinned. In the end, Varian didn't hold back and let them all use mid-level 6 strength. It was too much for the current him. After their strength rose by a significant margin, Varian could no longer suppress them. Boom! Boom! And 20 minutes in, he once again crashed to the wall and coughed out blood. Cough. Cough. One more. Varian covered himself with lightning and space armors. The next moment, he appeared in front of the trio and slashed down. But they were already prepared. Boom. As he knelt on one knee, the sweet prompt finally came. Advancing to level 6, advancing to level 6. His lightning mana and space power skyrocketed. The next moment, Varian's body disappeared and he found himself in a vast, dark space. In front of him was a chaotic space covered by a silver curtain. Gulp. He knew what it was. It was the layer. If one could cross the layer, they could reach inner space. But Varian didn't have much time to think. He simply touched the layer a few beside and the next moment, he was almost teleported outside the spaceship. No shit. His teleportation distance improved greatly. Rumble. Lightning mana pulsed through his body and filled every inch of his being. This was called empowerment. The elemental mana would improve the physical stats of the user to high levels. But maintaining the form was extremely draining. Arg. Golden light covered Varian and he punched out. Boom. The punch broke the sonic limit and blasted the wind. Varian felt the increased strength and grinned at the 3 training puppets. Attack. Is this how people who died look like? Enigma said lightly. In front of her was a hologram. Varian looked at his changed outfit and was puzzled. Then it struck him. The injuries from earlier were as clear as day. Especially from the last battle. He must have really looked like a person on the verge of death. Shaking his head, Varian threw the distracting thoughts off his mind. From the ghost ship, he looked down at Enigma in the distance and said in a serious tone. I am joining Shadow Guardians. I'm dead for the public, and the sovereigns. And of course, for Creo and Julius. Varian shrugged at Enigma's hologram. Her mask only showed her eyes, dazzling eyes that shone with 3 colors. Those eyes were fixated on him as they awaited his response. I intend to stay dead. Or they'd probably send level 8s after me. Fair enough. But... Enigma snapped her fingers and a tricolor throne appeared behind her. She sat on it gracefully and crossed her legs. Resting her chin on her hand placed on the armrest, she asked. Why should I take you in? The air quietened down. Master. The aura. The aura is fluctuating wildly. Boo screamed. Following Enigma's words, the aura skyrocketed. Boo almost drove away the ghost ship. At the moment, the ghost ship was a few miles above Enigma's residence, yet Boo was scared shitless. But it had all the reasons in the world. If a high awakener were to observe, they'd realize that all the aura in the surroundings was gathering towards one place high in the sky. It was gathering towards the ghost ship which was supposed to be invisible and undetectable. You almost got my position right. Varian's expression didn't change much. Enigma had a reputation for her strangeness. Abyss couldn't detect her. Not even sovereigns could capture her. Her strength used to be level 7s, but it quickly reached level 8. Not just that, it was actually at the peak of level 8 now. Varian didn't know much about hybrids, but he felt that no hybrid could replicate Enigma's feats. Why should you take me in, huh? Varian repeated her words and looked at Enigma on her throne. She stared at him with cold eyes. Varian snapped his fingers and a throne appeared behind him. Its grandeur was only greater than Enigma's. Varian sat on his throne and assumed the same posture as Enigma, crossing his legs and propping his head with his hand. Because I can help you accomplish your goals much faster, he said in a tone of absolute confidence. Don't you want to end the Shadow Order? Don't you want to find out the traitors who are working for Abyssals? Don't you want to nip them in the bud before they become a menace? Forget it, they're already a menace. So tell me, Enigma. What is the price you are willing to pay to recruit me? Varian asked with a smile. Enigma looked at him with indifferent eyes. Varian stared back nonchalantly. Good. Enigma nodded. She didn't attack him nor did she get angry. Master, the aura has dispersed. She was just trying to test you. No shit. Varian's expression didn't change. He actually controlled the ghost ship and lowered its altitude. Master. Wah. What are you doing? We're in a level 8 range now. She'll find out. Wait, never mind. Boo shut up after realizing Enigma already knew their position. Enigma felt a distinct presence in her perception and raised her brow. Her tricolor eyes glowed for a moment before she leaned back in her throne. Brave. Varian simply smiled. She wouldn't attack him anyway. And even if she did, Boo had no problem getting out. Though repeatedly bearing such attacks could break down the ship. If you can do what you really said, I am willing to pay a reasonable price to recruit you. Enigma said unhurriedly. What do you want? Sia. Varian said without thinking. Rejected. Enigma also answered without thinking. Even though he knew it'd be the case, Varian was still slightly disappointed. Shaking his head, he went for the next best option. Sia's protection. Excuse me? Enigma stood up and walked up to Varian's hologram. Her eyes glowed with a dangerous light. Varian didn't care about her reaction. I got attacked by Creo and Julius. What if they attack her next? Those fuckers used level 7s on me when they thought I was only a level 5. I wouldn't be surprised if they arranged an ambush with level 9s. Enigma's brows knit together and her voice grew colder. She lived without you for a year and she was safe. Varian clenched his fists and asked angrily. You want me to pin hope on the past records? You aren't pinning any hopes. Enigma sneered. You simply don't trust me. You don't think I'll protect Sia when the time comes? Yes. Now, we're working together, but I don't know you. If push comes to shove, I will protect Sia with my life. Enigma cut him off and said in an absolute tone. You don't understand my bond with her, but we're closer than sisters. Varian was taken aback by her words and the sincerity in them. What the fuck happened? Did Enigma and Sia already know each other before the Roxana incident? No, even then, it'd only be a year-old relationship. Closer than sisters, that's a big claim. Just how much time and effort would go into nurturing such a bond? But looking at Enigma, who now clenched her fists and stared at him like she'd attack him any second, Varian decided to believe her. For now. Fine. I will believe what you said, Enigma, but if something happens to her. Varian's body glowed with impeccable white and black lights. It's all on you. And if she stays safe, it's all on me? Enigma suddenly asked, catching him off guard. Yes? Varian nodded with a strange expression. Where was this conversation going? I'll keep that in mind. Enigma waved her hand and her throne disappeared. With a snap, a token shot towards the ghost ship. Boo caught it and after a deep scan, presented the token to Varian. It was a black token in the shape of a large shield. Varian injected his aura into it and it hummed lightly. In no time, Varian felt a connection between them. Sia is busy, but she's safe. Enigma said. She's mad at the Xanders and wanted to go on a killing spree. Her cold voice seemed tired for the first time as Enigma sighed. Finally, I can convince her to not do that. Looks like their relationship is better than I thought. Anyway, Enigma looked at him and her eyes narrowed. Since you joined, you have several choices. First, you can train here. Though I doubt the resources we have can help you much. Second, you can learn managing the organization. Varian rolled his eyes at the option. There should be one with missions, right? Gimme a mission. He urged. Enigma seemed to smile behind her mask. With a flick of her wrist, another object shot up to the ghost ship. This time, Varian was holding a face mask. An 8-star treasure. It can hide your identity and even morph your aura. Unless you're specially checked by level 9s, it'll be fine. She explained. Isn't this too precious? Varian asked in confusion. Of course it is. Enigma rolled her eyes. Her voice was now frustrated. Like you, Sia also demands your safety. She didn't worry much as you're in the academy. But now, anyway, I am giving it to you because of Sia. Enigma took a moment to compose herself. She didn't speak this much in a whole day, but here she was, doing that in a few minutes. Looking at Varian, she exhaled. Don't die. I don't think I can handle it. Huh? The mess that comes with your death. Sia will go crazy. I can't handle it. Haha. Varian laughed. Sia still cared about him and he just wanted to see her right away. Though it's impossible, knowing her thoughts made him happy. Somehow, his laughter annoyed Enigma who was always composed. She tapped her comm and picked a file. Here. A kidnapping case from one of the space cities of Uranus cluster region. Enigma's aura pushed out the ghost ship. Get out now. Varian was out of the secret realm shortly. What a short-tempered woman, TSK. Sia will never do that, maybe Sarah will beat me, arg, forget it. Shaking his head, he checked the mission details. Location, Valos Space City, Uranus cluster region. Mission, the kidnapping cases have been on a skyrocketing rise. Enormous amounts of wealth is changing hands every day. Accidentally, our intel found out the news of a kidnapping plan. Prevent the kidnapping or rescue the target. Preferred strength, low level 6 to high level 6. Varian chuckled. Just this? How hard can it be? What can even go wrong? Right? Correction, this was meant when this chapter was the latest a couple of days ago. It was not meant for today. Apologizes. Former message, will be released in around an hour. Then. Sarah looked at the rather messy room with a complicated expression. He really made himself home. There were various articles belonging to the sovereigns. Hologram posters about the Abyss invasion and so on. It was messy, but it was his. It was Varian's room. In the world which lost all colors dimmed, glimpses of their memories were like the sparkles of colors. Ha! Sarah felt a suffocating weight on her chest. It wasn't new though. Since that day, she found everything difficult. Everything was too heavy. Too hard. Too laborious. It was as if she was carrying the weight of their two lives on her shoulders. Sarah was about to return to the practice room right after her rest. It was what she did for the past few days. Sarah. Her body stiffened and she rushed towards the source of the voice. She broke into living room and looked around with red eyes. It was as if she was trying to breathe in water. She searched the empty house in an attempt to find the source of that voice. The sleek white floors, the bright walls filled with expensive yet elegant hollow pictures, and the empty hallways. With each passing second, her hope shrunk and desperation grew. No, no. Sarah muttered, tears welling up in her eyes. Sarah. His familiar voice called again, and even though she knew it was likely her hallucination, Sarah ran towards the sound source. Her garden, filled with vibrant flowers and precious plants. It exuded a sweet smell that would have usually calmed the mind. Sarah would breathe in the fresh air and enjoy it every time. Not now. To her, this garden, it was just empty. It evoked a distant memory of him. When they went on a mission to Virgin Dungeon, everyone was panicking about going to the main hideout. Olivia, Ivy, Lucas and Crimson, the members of Ciara team, had thoughts of backing off. It was a tense moment. They were about to risk their lives. And Varian. Varian was plucking flower petals. It was the first time he made an impression on her. His composure, his level-headedness, she appreciated them. At that time, she thought he might achieve something in his life. He already did. He did things most people could never even dream of doing. Dream. Sarah's eyes suddenly narrowed. Dreamer? Her eyes glowed for a moment before they dimmed again. If he did survive, he would have contacted me. Sarah said with a wry smile. Sarah, you need to stop hoping. It's over. Try to live your best for him. Make him proud. She said to herself and walked back into the house. Anna was called for an emergency mission despite her objections, and she rejected every other maid sent by her father. She just wanted to be alone. Anna, Varian. Sarah paused on her way to practice room and looked at the dining room. The memories of their first home meal surfaced in her mind. He really loved her cooking. I wanted to do something for him. Sarah's body stiffened and she walked into the kitchen. She took out a few ingredients from the storage and chopped away the ingredients with precision. I wanted to do something for you, she said softly, recalling how she practiced cooking and blew it up most of the time. She couldn't handle the awakened magic beasts, so the best she could do was unawakened, level 0 monsters. But even then, Sarah added the spices to the meat, put on the lid and bit her lip. My cooking is still horrible, but I wished. She choked in the middle, as if there was a lump in her throat. Do you remember, Varian? You cried on the first day? I still remember the pain I felt. Watching you break into tears tore me apart. I didn't know how I hurt you or if it was really me who hurt you. It was the only time I saw you crying. Whenever I see others seeing your strength, the moments you shone, I recall that day you cried. They don't know how much pain you're hiding in your heart. They don't know your fights. They don't know Varian who was oppressed. They didn't know Varian who struggled right from the first day. They only see your glory. And I just want to share your pain. Sarah said under her breath. And if possible, make you happy, even if it's just a bit. She forcibly tried to smile and failed. Since you like Anna's cooking, and it makes you smile every time, I thought, I want to make you smile too. Sarah manipulated the aura in the cooking bowl and tried to distribute it along with the concentration of the spices. I thought I could make you smile too. So, I tried to learn. I tried. I really tried. Sarah lowered her head and clenched her fists. Her nails dug into her palms, but she felt nothing. Breathing shortly, she added the final batch of seasoning and said, I thought I had time to learn it slowly. I wanted to surprise you on your birthday, as my gift. Sarah closed her eyes in pain. Who am I cooking for anymore? Maybe it's in your memory. Pap. The cooking bowl burst into two and Sarah stopped. She looked at the burnt ingredients and muttered. I failed again, I guess that's it, I'm just not good enough. It's my fault. Sarah ordered the bot to clean up and looked at the kitchen for one last time. I'll just practice. Sarah, his voice called out from behind. Not again, I can't take the disappointment. Sarah shook her head and sighed. She didn't dare to turn around. If she did and found nothing, the pain would be too much to bear. Sarah. No. He never called her in this tone. It must be an illusion again. But why? Why am I crying? Even if you call me like that, I am not falling for it. Her voice betrayed her words as tears wetted the side of her cheeks. Sarah. He called out again. This time, his voice was lonely, just like how she was feeling. Please. Sarah's tears rolled down as she turned around. I don't want any more pain, Sarah forgot to speak in even breath as she found herself in his embrace. Sarah. Sarah was in the same situation. When she suddenly found herself in a hug, she naturally struggled. She couldn't see who the person was, and after hugging her, he stopped talking. As she was about to use her ice mana, she halted. This smell. This warmth. This feeling. Sarah closed her eyes and hugged him tightly, as if she didn't want to lose him again. Her heart raced, and she felt a burst of emotions well in her heart. Even though she knew she was dreaming, she held him tighter. She could feel his breath on her hair, his hands on her waist, and she could hear his heartbeat. Everything was so real. Before she knew it, her tears were wetting his shirt. He patted her back like he was consoling a kid. His voice was gentle and soothing. Why you? Be bastard. Sarah bit him lightly and said in annoyance. You died. Do you know how sad I was? And you came to my dreams repeatedly. I even had illusions because of you. And in this dreamlike illusion, you are treating her like a kid. I won't fall for this trick. Or so she thought, but as he kept stroking her back and whispered. It's all right. It's all right. Sarah found herself unable to curse him as she broke down into even more tears. With her tears, the weight on her heart fell. The grief was replaced by a sense of peace. Now, she just wanted to focus on her goals, and by giving her best, she wanted to make him proud. Even if she woke up from this dream, she won't be as depressed. I didn't think you were a crybaby. My shirt is completely wet. His breath tickled her ears and Sarah lightly shivered. She was feeling something different, something warm. But crybaby? Sarah's eyes were still closed and she was still leaning on his chest, but her grip increased as she asked in a menacing voice. Who are you calling a crybaby? Ha ha ha. He laughed out loud, and even though she knew this was a dream, Sarah couldn't help but smile. I want to stay like this forever, but he wouldn't want me to do that, would he? Varian would want me to pursue my goal. He was the one who said not to believe that dual awakeners can't be sovereigns. When I meet him in the afterlife one day, I should be able to tell him proudly. I lived my best. I gave it my all. You can be proud of me. And thank you, it's because of you that I was able to do it. So, Sarah gently freed herself from his hug. Thank you for this, dream, but now I need to do what I must do. Sarah wiped her tears and said with a strong smile. She was still looking at his chest. She was afraid to raise her head and see that familiar face again, but just once. Sarah raised her head and saw Varian looking at her in confusion. Dream? What dream? Huh? Sarah opened her mouth in shock. You're not my illusion. Varian pinched her cheeks. Feel your cheeks. Yuesh. Sarah answered. Am I still an illusion now? He asked with a teasing smile. I. Sarah's eyes widened and she couldn't utter a word. Wait, did she do all that with the real Varian? Arg. I want to hide somewhere. TSK. You look cute when you blush. Varian lightly tapped her nose and said. Arg. Sarah swatted his hand away and ran into her room, closing it shut. Bang. Varian stood dumbfounded. Wait, this isn't how it is supposed to be. He said to no one in particular. He knocked on the door and said, Sarah? Are you mad? Okay, I'm sorry I couldn't contact you. Master, you said you were master at understanding women's emotions. Boo gloated at his plight. Shut up. This is normal. She must be shocked or something. Varian desperately defended his image. It was his black history, but for better or worse, Sia did drag him to watch some dramas with her. Varian hated them all, of course. But he learned things, or at least he thought he did, on how to deal with women. Sia didn't correct him for some reason, and he thus thought himself to be a master at reading women. Logically, I should wait outside the door for an hour or something. Then she'll open the door and I'll have to apologize for another hour, then there will be some misunderstanding which will prolong the drama for another month. Varian muttered. But breaking his expectations, the door opened and Sarah came out. She changed into a white shirt and blue shorts. Except for her puffed-up red eyes, she looked nothing like the crying mess she was a few minutes ago. You were looking thin. Before he could finish, Varian was pulled into a hug. This time, Sarah didn't cry. She just held him tightly. Varian sighed and just patted her lightly. Varian. I have something to tell you. Something very important. Okay. Why don't you guess it? According to the dramas I watched, Sia made me watch, when the heroine is not depressed, something to make her depressed must happen. You are getting married? No. Master found you a fiancé? No. Ah. I get it. You must stay away from me for a year for reasons you cannot reveal to me. And I can't even meet you once during the year or contact you. Varian smirked at Sarah, who widened her eyes. See, I got you. Sarah looked at his smirk with an incredulous expression and sighed in pity. Don't watch too many dramas. Dramas? What are they? Varian feigned ignorance. Sarah rolled her eyes and asked. Do you know why I'm hugging you? Because you missed me. And? You thought I was dead. But I'm not. So you're happy. Anne? You're worried all of this might be a dream and I would just disappear. And? Sarah was losing patience already. And what? I listed all reasons already. Varian said in confusion. Why are you so clever in many things, but so dumb, so dense in others? Sarah sighed with a defeated expression. Dumb? Me? Who are you kidding? Varian snorted. Never mind. Sarah shook her head and then her blue eyes locked with his. They shone brightly as she asked word by word. Give me a good reason you didn't contact me or forget about leaving this place. Gulp. Varian gulped. He explained what happened completely, and naturally brought up Sia. The dumb mistake Eric made caused an assassination. Varian expected Sarah to be surprised about Sia and question him about her identity. But she covered her mouth and sat in silence as blankly stared into the distance. Varian's thoughts spun fast and he held her hand anxiously. Do you know Sia? Shoo. Sarah made herself comfortable and mumbled in a fearful voice. Just never do that again. I told Anna long ago. If you can't see my body, don't think I'm dead. Varian sighed and adjusted his position to that Sarah could be more comfortable. Sarah's expression darkened. She didn't tell you? Varian asked with a frown. No. Sarah shook her head. She didn't want to give you hope. Varian realized the maid's intention. Sarah also understood as she replied with mixed feelings. If I was given that hope, and it broke, then I wouldn't be able to bear it. I would be devastated. Varian cut her off. Sarah raised her head and saw he was looking at her intensely. She was flustered for a moment. What? If something really happens to me, I don't want you to be depressed. I don't believe in reincarnation. Do the best you can in this one chance we got to live. What if I died? Sarah asked. Varian's body shook lightly, and before he knew it, he was holding her tightly. I'll kill whoever is responsible and I'll be depressed. Sarah smiled at his response and then chuckled. Isn't that hypocritical from you? Varian didn't have an answer. Losing his mom was a big blow for him. But it was losing Sia's memories that impacted him irreconcilably. The loss was like a scar in his psyche. He might recover his memories, but its traces would remain forever. So, Varian couldn't tolerate losing people close to him. If the person was someone really close like Sarah or Sia, it would drive him insane. Seeing his condition, Sarah decided to switch the topic. Sia joined the academy last year. She was a peak level 2. I was also peak level 2, but in both paths. I don't know why, but we hit it off. Sarah had a look of nostalgia. Varian, on the other hand, listened to every word carefully. Sia's speed of progress is the fastest I've seen, second only to you. She didn't take any treasures, but she quickly reached peak level 3 in a few weeks. It shocked many teachers and she was approached by many. All the factions wanted to recruit. But Sia, she liked to spend her time alone. She often fell into complete silences, and other times, she broke into tears. Sarah's voice was low as she recalled the pain she saw on Sia's face. Every time I asked her why, she would just smile and say, "Everything is fine." I couldn't help her and it frustrated me. She was a bit like my brother, Sam. She is hardworking, she followed the rules, she always helped others. At some point, we were best friends. Sarah hugged Varian tightly and whispered. We made our adventure team, Sayara. It was fine until one day, I was severely injured by Shadow Order members. Sia advanced to level 4 in the middle of the fight and she fed me her blood or her blood essence. Sarah didn't know exactly and paused. Varian patted her lightly and she continued. After that, I was quickly healed and my talent also improved. Sarah confided her biggest secret without hesitation. I see. Varian's voice turned grave. Then she disappeared soon. Why yes. I asked around and they said she went on a mission. I picked a mission and went out. When I returned to campus, no one knew about Sia. They all acted like. Sarah's face paled as she recalled the scene. They all acted like she never existed. Varian gritted his teeth and his eyes turned red. He understood the ins and outs now. Someone saw Sia's actions on Sarah. Perhaps they were only curious about her blood helping Sarah heal, or perhaps they concluded she was somewhat special and conducted a test on her blood before deciding. Whatever the case, this activity was the trigger. It was the reason for all the pain Sia went through. Shadow Order, those fucking sons of bitches. Varian wanted to slaughter each and every one of them. Not just slaughter, but torture. They deserved to die 1,000,000 times. Father thought I was ill and wanted to erase my memories of her. I didn't agree. So, he asked me to promise to never reveal it to anyone. Sarah said and waited for his response. Varian? Sarah was shocked at his expression. He was exuding a thick killing intent with a bloodthirsty smile. It was as if he was about to go on a slaughter. Ah. Varian snapped out of his rage and shook his head. Looking at Sarah's blue eyes, he sighed lightly and began explaining Sia. Sarah listened to their story and her eyes went through a series of conflicting emotions. Sia, I see. So, all your search, all your actions, everything you did was for her? Her jealousy was as evident as sunlight. Of course. Varian nodded with a serious face. She's the only family I have. I must find her, solve her problems, avenge her. You should definitely do that. Sarah agreed, but then continued with a resentful look. Families, they can get bigger, you know. Huh? What do you mean? Don't you plan to marry or something? Me? Ha ha ha. Varian laughed like it was a joke. If I marry, I'd cause too many heartbreaks. I don't want to. He was about to continue bragging, but Sarah's icy blue eyes shut him up. Marry who? With the way my life is going, I might as well marry Lady Death. After all, I was at her door too many times. Alright. Bad joke. Varian coughed. He forgot death was a sensitive topic for Sarah. Not everyone was like him, driven to near death every other day. Seeing that he didn't know what to speak more, Sarah sighed. Was he dumb or playing dumb? She didn't know. But after experiencing losing him once, she didn't want to stay silent, even if it embarrassed her. Varian. She cupped his cheeks and looked into his eyes. I like you. No. Like an idiot, he decided to visit her person. I totally deserve this. Painfully aware of her intense stare, Varian felt his heart race. I like you. Sarah said again, her face blushing like a ripe tomato. But she cupped his cheeks and looked into his eyes. Varian could feel her hands shake fiercely. She was trying to control her nervousness with her awakener powers, but still couldn't stop trembling. Just how nervous was she? Varian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But looking at her sky-blue eyes, he found himself out of words and thoughts. I like you. Sarah seemed to use up all her energy, and this time, it finally hit him. Varian felt his heart thump as it nearly leapt out of his chest. His palms were sweating before he knew it, and the next moment, he was staring at her wide eyes. He wanted to clarify things. She must be thinking of friendship as something else. Sarah, you don't know what, I know what I'm talking about. Sarah said with a determined expression. And Varian, I said it 3 times already. I'm expecting a response. What? Varian's mind was in confusion. But his heart, it already knew what it wanted. Even though Varian tried to deny it, the feelings welling inside him made it impossible. Varian was forced to confront his true feelings. Just like you said to my father, don't be a tsundere. Looking at his expression lost in thought, Sarah added, causing Varian to groan in frustration. Alright, when I was going angry in the dungeons, what was I really thinking? Now that he thought about it seriously, not withholding other factors, this was one of the reasons. He was worried how devastated Sarah would be. And he wanted to pleasantly surprise her by meeting her in person. Varian frowned in confusion and looked at Sarah. How the fuck was he supposed to know anyway? Where was the line between friendship and love? Someone tell me already. Sarah inched closer to him and leaned her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. I am thinking. Varian said. Don't think. Sarah closed her eyes and smiled. Feel it. Are you feeling anything? She slowly wrapped her arms around him. Her face was blushing, from ears to neck, but she had a serene smile. She was like a bird that finally returned to her nest and found the warmth she longed for every day. Exclamation point. Varian felt her soft bosom pressing against his chest and stiffened. In moments like this, he was reminded of a fact that he normally ignored. Sarah's beauty was one of its kind. She exuded a scent of flowers that calmed his mind, and her charming curves gave her a natural young charm. Naturally, when she leaned onto him, a good portion of her body was in contact with his. And painfully self-conscious, Varian discovered something awkward. He looked down and wanted to curse. Damn it, hormones. We were having a moment here and I was really trying to think or feel. When I hold you like this, I feel peaceful. I know if I ever face a problem, you'll stand for me. But don't worry, I plan to fight my battles myself. Your presence is more than enough. I am happy. I don't know you completely, but from what I know of you, I completely like you. You are impulsive sometimes, daring a few times, but every time, you're reliable. I don't know what you went through, I really want to know. But I won't ask. Just know, I'll always be there for you. I might not know the solutions to your problems. Looking at how fast you've grown, I realize that you might not need my help at all. But, if you ever face a hardship, a heartbreak, just know, you aren't alone. There is a girl willing to suffer with you, smile with you, and most of all, be with you. Sarah muttered softly. Varian looked down and saw Sarah. There was a sweet smile on her face as she spoke each and every word that tugged at his heartstrings. His heart skipped a beat and thumped against his chest, as if it wanted to go to the girl. Varian pulled her closer and sat her on his lap. They were now in a much more intimate position, but Varian didn't have any other thoughts. He simply lowered his head and their foreheads touched each other. Sarah was taken aback by his actions. Her eyebrows quivered. She was nervous, yet she didn't move. Even though she felt like her heart might burst out at any moment, she patiently waited. She was scared and hopeful at the same time. But most of all, she was happy that she was brave enough. She did what she never thought she could. Varian recalled the time he spent with her. They started off as a normal senior captain junior member. Along the mission, he slowly started knowing about her. The third in Amethyst list. Goddess Sarah. Her concern for her teammates. Her courage to take risks. Her morals in repaying Seth's favor. Her care in looking after a weak level 2 and not despising him like others her level would. He was impressed by her from the beginning. She was just being herself. Returning from the vanished dungeon, he never expected she would be the one to find him before everyone else. He could still remember the way she cried like it was yesterday. Then he saw the other sides of her. Her childishness with Anna, her vulnerability against her past, her inferiority complex against her dual awakening, her fear of disappointing her father. He saw it all. Her strengths and weaknesses. Her good and bad. He saw it all. And now he knew why his heart beat so fast when he thought of her. Sarah, I think I'm in love with you. A/N 2 chapters upcoming in few minutes. Varian sighed in bliss. Not just think. From your heartbeat, you surely are. Sarah chuckled, her beautiful laughter ringing like nature's melody. Varian looked at her smile and smiled back. They held each other in silence for a long time. There were no talks. No movements. It was in moments like this Varian was reminded what he really wants and what was missing in his life. A warm and loving family. And peace to keep a smile on their face. He couldn't do it in the past, but now he had the capability. For my family, for me, for these two girls, I must. Arg. I will go and wash my face. Sarah suddenly got up and rushed back into her room. Varian was dumbfounded, but before he could even say a word, she closed the door shut. Ha. I did it. Sarah placed her hand on her chest and smiled. Then she covered her cheeks and blushed furiously. Did I just say all that? What was I thinking? Sarah drilled into her quilt and hid herself in the bed. After doing all that, how I can see him. Arg. Sarah rolled on the bed as she hugged the quilt. Her mind was hyperactive and she was thinking a million things. Most of them didn't make sense. Thankfully, Varian didn't see her in this state, or he might have wondered if she had problems. Finally, Sarah paused and sighed deeply. Her embarrassment wore off, and after washing up, she went back into the living room. Huh? Did he leave already? Sarah looked around but found no signs of the guy who just admitted his love. Ah. Brain, be back to normal already. Sarah patted her head and focused her body senses. The next moment, she appeared in the dining hall. Besides the usual large table, there was now a small round table with seating for two. There were a couple of ordinary, but aromatic dishes on the table. Even from afar, Sarah could sniff the smell. What's this? Sarah asked as she seated herself across Varian. You were trying cooking, didn't you? Varian placed his chin on his hand and smirked. I failed. I totally suck at it. Sarah lowered her head and admitted in shame. In her defense, she didn't have much time to practice as she usually spent time on training. And she wasn't Anna, the all-powerful maid. Ha ha ha. Don't worry about it. Varian laughed and served her the dishes. Sarah didn't need to think to know, he made them. Sarah didn't have a high expectation, but her opinion changed after the first bite. It was a normal dish, there was no aura in it. Not even a level 1 beast's aura, yet, it was darn tasty. Anna's cooking raised Sarah's standards. So while his cooking wasn't objectively better, Sarah found it to her liking. The taste, the aroma, there was something magical in them she couldn't point out. Their small talks continued during the meal as Varian informed Sarah about his plans. Sarah wiped her mouth with a napkin and looked at Varian with curious eyes. I liked it. Thank you. Ha ha ha. You don't need to try with level 1 meat. Even normal ingredients can be used to make great foods. Varian waved his hand. Besides, it's a waste of time to learn something so hard. But didn't you like Anna's dishes? I wanted to do the same for you. Not because they're high-level ingredients. I just like the taste. Varian shrugged and admitted. Then me. Sarah face-bombed. I like you the way you are. No need to go out of your way. Besides, if you still like it, I will teach you some normal dishes once I'm free. Varian waved his hand and said casually. Sarah felt a strange sense of relief upon hearing his words. She was trying so hard, trying to be like Anna. But now she realized she didn't need to be Anna to have him smile. She would do it in her own way. Sarah smiled brightly and looked at his handsome face. I didn't know you could cook. I couldn't. But Sia used to force me to cook as revenge sometimes. Varian laughter trailed off and abruptly stopped. The atmosphere suddenly cooled down. Even if it was a monkey, it'd know that something was off. Much less Varian. He already noticed the change. Varian looked at Sarah's cold expression and his thoughts raced. I didn't say anything wrong, so what happened to her? Sia, they are best friends, so is Sarah getting worried about her? Well, Sarah was indeed worried about Sia's safety. How could she not? But after Varian told her previously that she was in Shadow Guardians, and was protected by Enigma, she heaved a sigh of relief. If Sia was captured, Sarah would have done everything at her disposal to protect her. But after knowing that Sia was voluntarily working in the Shadow Guardians, along with relief, Sarah also felt a faint resentment. I was worried about you for so long, but you didn't even contact me. Is that how much our friendship worth? As if that wasn't enough, Varian brought up Sia. Somehow, Sarah felt a sense of frustration and anger. The topic took a dangerous turn. So, Mr. Dreamer, you are joining the Shadow Guardians to find Sia? Sarah asked with a natural expression. Uh-oh. Varian nodded. He explained his plans already as he didn't wish for her to be worried. Then what about me? Sarah pointed to herself as she gritted her teeth. What about you? Varian raised a brow. You'll need to attend the academy. You want to graduate and enlist in the army, don't you? Sarah clenched her fists and looked at him before she let out a sigh like a deflated balloon. Was Varian dense or was he pretending to be dense? Sarah's eyes narrowed and she decided to check his feelings on Sia. Well, no. I think of Maya as my little sister. I want to kick Kyle sometimes for making her sad. But Sia, she's like, I don't know, our bond is unique. Varian said slowly, and in the back of his mind, he realized where this was going. Even though your memories of her are still incomplete, you are willing to risk your life for her. Sarah crossed her arms and looked at him with a pensive look. Yes. Would you like to spend your entire life with her? At this point, Sarah was biting her lip as she glared at Varian resentfully. Yes. She went through a lot because of me. I want to keep her happy. Varian could hear the jealousy in Sarah's voice, but he answered her question truthfully. After what Sia went through, his heart ached for her suffering. Even though he failed in his first promise, protect you, he wanted to uphold it for the rest of his life. What about me? Sarah looked at him with red eyes, her voice trembling. Of course, I want to see you happy. Varian was honest again. Bang! Honesty caused him to be blasted away and being crashed onto the wall. Of course, Sarah didn't put in any strength, but... Why are you punching me? Varian asked with a confused expression. You just confessed that you like her. Sarah stood up and yelled. Wait, what? Don't put words into my mouth. How is that liking her? Varian was dumbfounded. Why you are just dense as a black hole. Sarah didn't know whether to laugh or cry. My memory is incomplete. How the hell would I know? Varian felt like he was a victim. Truth be told, his past's emotions towards Sia was evolving all the time. Initially, he only treated her as a distant relative, then a close relative, then a friend, and then someone closer until they reached a stage where he was willing to risk his life for her. Did he love her in the past? Maybe. Would that affect him now? He didn't know. But regardless of the feelings, keeping her safe and happy was a must. Varian wasn't going to compromise on this. And Sarah knew it too. My intuition is telling me that you like her, even if you don't know it yourself. Varian wanted to flip the table. The fuck with your intuition. So, who are you picking? Sarah walked in front of him and looked into his eyes. Even though she looked like she was giving a choice, her aura was threatening to break out at any moment. Varian knew that if he said something that displeased her, she'd really beat him up on the spot. Sigh. Varian took a deep breath. He looked at her Sarah again, and this time, he saw her true self. Despite the angry expression she put on, she was shivering. She was scared. Afraid of losing him again. She almost lost him to Vanish Dungeon. Then she thought she lost him to the assassinations. Now, she was afraid she'd lose him. This time, to her best friend. Varian rubbed his forehead and cursed the heavens. Well, why the fuck are you putting me in this troubling situation? Isn't my life hard enough already? You fucking sadist. I hope your house is full of demonic spiders. But now, he needed to do what he must do. Varian, Desi, Sarah couldn't utter a word as Varian suddenly pulled her into his embrace. Even though her mind was in chaos, even though she wanted to argue, even though she wanted to make sure she wouldn't lose him, she didn't speak. Don't worry too much, Sarah. Varian patted her head. I don't know what I feel towards her. She isn't even willing to talk to me right now. I need to find her and repay her. She had been through too much. She's the reason Enigma protected me. She kept me safe all this time, or I would have been killed by Xanders long ago. And, even if she did nothing, she's important to me. Varian said, and with each word, Sarah hugged him tightly. Varian stroked her back lightly in an attempt to console her. She was feeling insecure, and he hoped she could feel his sincerity. I can't abandon her, Sarah. I can't do it. His voice was low, but determined. Recalling his memories with Sia, he closed his eyes in pain. If he left her after everything she did for him, and probably still doing for him, then he'd despise himself. Even after going through so much pain under Roxana, what was Sia's condition to join Shadow Guardians? Let Enigma make an agreement to prevent Xanders from harming him. And not just that, she also asked Enigma to appear during his entrance test, and she urged Enigma to retaliate after he was thrown into Vanish Dungeon. Despite doing everything for him, she never asked anything in return. She did it without his knowledge, and if he didn't find out, she'd have done it forever. If this didn't explain her sacrifice, he didn't know what would. As Varian's face distorted in rage recalling her pain, he felt a pair of soft hands caressing his cheeks and opened his eyes to see Sarah staring at him. The nervousness she previously was now reduced, and she looked more stable. I'm sorry, I was rushing things. You're right, you shouldn't abandon her. In fact, if you do, I'd hate you. Sarah said slowly. Varian patted her head lightly. I'll be honest, once you meet her, I'm afraid I'll lose you to her. Sarah bit her lip and confessed her fear. Varian liked this quality of Sarah very much. Even if embarrassed her, she was at times very honest and brave enough to say what she was feeling. Don't worry too much. It'll be all right. Varian patted her head. Hey, I'm not a kid. Sarah protested but didn't dodge. She was clearly enjoying it. Sometimes, she was not so honest. Haha. We can think about Sia after I meet her. Sarah was silent for a moment before nodding begrudgingly. Yeah, we'll just think about her issue later. Like all humans, they decided to bury the problem until it exploded. I have one more confession to make. I can't tell you more, but I am a bit special. Varian teleported away from Sarah and snapped his fingers. Boom. Bang. Zap. The floor cracked under his kick, the space fluctuated mildly, lightning danced around his arms, his mental force picked the paintings and floated them, another mental force showed illusions, and finally, Varian's feet turned into roots. The powers of 6 divine paths were displayed in full glory for her to witness. Sarah opened her mouth in shock. Varian cleverly avoided and said, I will be going to Valos shortly. I can't communicate with you through your comm, that's why this pic. Looking at his pitiful eyes, even though Sarah knew he was saying those words to keep the pic, she couldn't force him. Forget it, forget it. It's only with him anyway. Meanwhile, Varian opened the pic and clicked his tongue. You're cute. I should have taken a few pics while you were crying. He was abruptly cut off by Sarah's cold stare and wisely chose not to continue the topic. Finally, after what seemed like hours, but in fact was only a few minutes, Sarah asked. So, what was that? 6 divine paths? How? Sarah looked at him with genuine curiosity. Well, I don't know how for sure, but I have a secret that lets me do it. It's a bit complicated, but what I want to tell you is this. Varian held her by the shoulders and looked into her eyes seriously. I have 6 paths, I can still be a sovereign. You too can. Just trust me, okay? Sarah looked into his eyes and finally nodded. This time, she didn't have to convince herself. She was convinced. Then she thought of his powers and exclaimed. Why, you're in level 6 already? And in 3 paths? Dear heaven. I'll be in 6, soon. Catching up to you. Varian smiled and ruffled her hair. Ouch. She swatted his hand away and glared. Unfair. Why can you, who has 6 paths, progress so fast and I progress at the pace of a snail? If the other geniuses heard Sarah's words, they'd cough out blood and pass out. She's only a second-year cadet and both her paths were high level 6. In fact, after the trial, she was about to reach peak level 6. Just a few more days of practice and her strength would tremendously improve. Without any doubts, she'd be stronger than any other genius, save for Charles. Even Ashtar would lose to her. But Varian, oh well, Varian was a different case altogether. If I'm stronger, I can protect you, okay? Varian leaned forward and said. You think I'm a damsel in distress? I need your protection. Sarah raised her fist and smiled. Varian decided to sue the drama companies. The fuck are they teaching? This line worked well for all heroes. The heroines melted at this line and often gave a kiss or something. Well, he never thought of Sarah as a weak girl anyway. But still, those lessons I picked from drama companies, was all my life a lie? Sia, just what did you make me watch those days? Sarah ignored his expression that seemed to doubt life and frowned. You are going to Valos, the city of depravity? Hearing that ominous title, Varian's lips twitched. He checked a long message sent by Enigma and begrudgingly nodded at Sarah. She sighed and looked at him in pity. Wait, what? Varian didn't understand, of course. But he felt like he got scammed by Enigma. He was yet to study his mission's location. He planned to do it later on, but now Sarah seemed to know about it. He was more than happy to listen. And if the mission was really a scam, he'd fight it out with the masked girl. Sarah snapped her fingers and the whole house went dark. The next second, a beautiful hologram appeared in the room. There were 2 suns at the center with 8 planets revolving around them. At a certain distance from each planet was a black flame, their corresponding abyss. In between each planet were many planetoids. The number varied with each planet, but the rule of thumb was that the greater the population of the planet, the more the planetoids. Then there were small dots. Space cities. Every planet had a couple of those. And finally, there was Pluto. Like other planets, it was a sphere, but unlike them, it was covered by dark wisps. Varian's gaze shifted to one section of the hologram. Sarah tapped into mid-air and the hologram zoomed in, leaving only 2 planets. And everything in between them. A huge blue-green planet with 27 moons came into view, and far away from it was a giant blue planet. Uranus and Neptune. Uranus was an ice giant before Blink, and its conditions were hostile to life. After Blink, specific regions of the planets turned hospitable. After the descent of dungeons in the 300s, humans got stronger and stronger. Their exploration of ruins also increased, and at some point, they found a few treasures in the ruins. These treasures weren't offensive or defensive or even for any combat purpose, but they were deemed as more precious than them all. These treasures made planets hospitable. Through the use of aura in ways humans were yet to understand, the planet's atmosphere was forcibly changed to a sufficient degree that allowed life to exist. Following that, humans constructed cities on hospitable places on the ground and built floating cities all over the planet. Uranus and Neptune were also colonized during the same period. Varian could see the cities on the planet with his enhanced eyesight. But what he was really focusing on was the in-between. To be precise, a cluster of space cities in between Uranus and Neptune. There were around 20 such cities. Even though he knew they were artificially constructed, Varian felt like he was watching a work of art. Each of these cities was the result of the blood and tears of many humans. Scientists, architects worked day and night. Military guarded everything, these projects with everything on the line. The Abyssals tried everything they can to stop this city from being a reality. But humans did it. Notwithstanding the enormous resources, the overall cost was a few million lives. Varian sighed in melancholy. There were many humans who deserved to die: Julius, Charles, Narcissus, Creo. But most of them deserved a better life. Most of the time, the problems came from the ones at the top. This time, it was Abyssals seeking to exterminate them. Varian, you know this, right? Sarah pointed to the cluster of space cities and asked. Uranus cluster cities. Varian answered. He read it sometime in the past and his telepath powers instantly retrieved it and the relevant information for him. Basically, they were a bunch of cities after Uranus and before Neptune. And why were they built? Sarah raised a brow and asked with a mischievous smile. Oh, come on. I studied for the entrance test anyway. Varian groaned, causing her to chuckle. All right. Just messing with you. Sarah smiled and waved her hand. There was no way Varian didn't know this. Cluster cities were built to ensure connectivity between the planets. As they lived through warring times, the army had an uncompromisable requirement. Each planet must be quickly reachable. If a war broke out between Earth and Demon Abyss, the army could send reinforcements from all the planets. With cutting-edge technology, the travel time between Earth and its 2 neighboring planets, Venus and Mars, were 3.83 hours and 7.3 hours respectively. But the army wasn't satisfied with this efficiency. 3 hours was enough time to cause irreversible damage to the enemy and establish an edge. This necessity birthed the teleportation formations. They made instant transfers between any 2 locations possible. Though they cost a ton of space stones and made many professors, men and women bald, they were one of the cornerstones of the Federation's stability. Each planet was installed with teleportation formations. In case of danger, the reinforcements can enter the formation of one planet and appear on the target planet in moments. It sounded well and good, but teleportation formations had their limitations. First, they were incredibly expensive. Speak nothing but the three main ingredients: space stones, spacorts, and space arrays. Spacorts, defective space stones, were the cheapest. But even they were hard to get. During the early days of his admission, Varian fought hard in a special dimension of the Academy to get spacorts. If even the cadets of Earth's best academy had to work their asses off to get the spacorts, one could imagine their scarcity. Then there were space arrays. They were to be constructed by space awakeners. But not every space awakener was proficient in them. The rigorous training it required often ate up training time, and other than minority, space awakeners tended to stay away from this line of expertise. Then came space stones. Expelled from the inner space. Rarest of the bunch. All these three ingredients were needed for teleportation formation. And even an unused teleportation formation consumed resources. Compared to the second problem, this drawback was secondary. Teleportation formations had limits on their distance. They could teleport from one planet to another for most, but as the farther one went in the solar system, the greater the distance between each planet. Thus, the teleportation formations failed for 3 planets. Saturn to Uranus. Uranus to Neptune. Even if you enter a teleportation formation in Saturn, you wouldn't reach Uranus. You'd be teleported to the vast empty space in between. Given the enormous interplanetary distance, the time needed to send reinforcements was ridiculous. From Saturn to Uranus took almost 6 days. Uranus to Neptune took 6.3 days. If the army really depended on purely space ships and took this much time, by the time reinforcements arrived at the site, the war would have long been over. So, cluster cities were constructed. Having one single city was risky, so there was a cluster of cities around the same distance from the host planet. Uranus had 20 such space cities that held the teleportation formation. They weren't used normally, but when they were activated, they saved lives. Valos was one such city. Given their strategic importance, each of the space cities would be strictly protected by their host planet. But Valos got the title of City of Depravity. Out of the 2 cluster cities, Saturn cluster is greatly maintained. Some space cities in those clusters rival even the planets in terms of training conditions. Sarah explained. Remember that battle maniac Misa? Varian nodded. That girl looked elegant and dignified, but the first thing that came out of her mouth was, "Let's duel." She is from the Saturn cluster. Even though they have resources, they are after all not the same as us planet residents. Not enough dungeons, not enough people, not enough natural resources. They have a very fierce contest over the resource. Misa grew up fighting for her training resources and eventually came to be one of the top 10 of our generation. Sarah paused and allowed those words to sink in. Varian realized something instantly. Despite equal footing, there was not a single significant figure from the Uranus cluster in the banquet. In fact, even in the level 5s he challenged, he didn't remember a single person from the Uranus cluster. Sarah looked at his frowning expression and held his hand. Patting him lightly, she continued. Uranus cluster is in a pretty bad state. Why? Varian didn't understand. They had the resources, they had the population, they even had the competition, so what's stopping them from prospering? Instead of answering, Sarah said. The ruling party of Uranus is responsible for taking care of their cluster cities. And the ruling party of Uranus is. Varian's eyes widened and he patted his forehead. Nile family. Fuck. It all made sense now. A few years ago, Pluto was quickly taken down. The then Uranus had to fight a 2-front war with Pluto and Thunder Abyss. It was on the verge of defeat. Until Nile family intervened. As the ruling party of Uranus, they were right next to Neptune. The Nile family sent their powerhouse to assist the Neptune without much delay. That was a time when, despite having cluster cities, the army didn't have the readiness to send reinforcements in time. Despite their strength, Neptune's morale was at an all-time low after Pluto's bloodbath. If not for the Nile family powerhouses holding back the precious time until the reinforcements arrived, Neptune would have been lost. The cost? 30% of all their higher awakeners were wiped out. Despite killing so many, the Abyssal's anger was far from over. They threw away wealth as they bribed, lured, and threatened people and assassinated the leading geniuses of the Nile family. From that day, Nile family was in an irreversible decline. Nile family doesn't have sufficient strength to maintain the law and order of its cluster cities, Sarah said. Then why not have someone else do it? Varian frowned. The human armed forces are pretty much stretched at this point. Even the army cannot bear the cost. Sarah rubbed her forehead. Besides, she looked at the hologram and once again zoomed in. These cluster cities can't be cleaned up easily. They are the hub of 70% illegal activities. Exclamation point. Varian wanted to ask, why not, but Sarah didn't give him the chance. They aren't as bad as you think. These cities have law and order. But, they have many dark organizations. Gangs. Training halls. Black market. Sarah's expression darkened. Even a shadow order branch dedicated to this cluster. Varian's expression sank hearing shadow order. They tried to assassinate him and Sarah. He used those assassins as punching bags, and they confessed that they were told it was the order of an abyss prince. Abrax or something. Varian didn't know why he was targeted, but now that he was dead officially, he decided to avenge himself later. After all, an abyss prince would be a level 7 at least. Not what he could contend now. But Shadow Order, he hated them to the bones. In his opinion, they were the chains holding back humanity's progress. If they didn't exist, perhaps humans would have had their 9th sovereign already. Who knew? Among the countless geniuses these bitches killed, someone might have done it. Shadow Order, Varian muttered with a glint in his eyes. In short, it's complicated. Sarah shrugged. Looking at his tense expression, she lightly pulled his lips into a smiling position and nodded. Varian rolled his eyes. But he did get her message. All right. You know what I did a few days ago with Earth's Shadow Order. Boo can find their secret realm because they're based on Earth, but searching for them in space, not going to happen. So I won't get into conflict with them. I just have one small mission. I probably got it because of how easy it is. Varian said, mostly to relax Sarah. Even though she tried to conceal her anxiety well, her clenched fists were giving it away. So that's good then. Sarah patted her chest and saw Varian smirking at her with an expression. Why don't you just admit you're worried? She punched him lightly and said. There's a deep underground network in the cluster cities. Shadow Order has many subordinate organizations there. And black market, it's best to stay out of it. The treasures they sell might be enticing, but all of them come with a price. Given your talent. Varian simply stared at Sarah, who went on and on. If it was others, he would have asked them to stop. But not her. In what seemed like nagging, he heard many other things. Her worries. Her not-so-hidden affection for him, the girl's fear of losing him, for real this time, and a trust in him to return safely, but most of all, the commitment to even dive into the abyss to help him should the need arise. Finally, Varian nodded and gave her a light hug. I'll see you soon. Take care. A/N, in chapter 338, I said, 2 chaps in a few minutes. It was meant for the day when 338 was the latest chap. But due to Priv, many readers have seen it later on. I apologize for the misunderstanding caused, and I'll try to ensure it doesn't repeat. The communication problem between them was solved by Boo. He gave her a new comm that wouldn't be tapped. Varian's thoughts drifted as the ghost ship slowly moved through the vast campus. The high-rise buildings made up of top-grade materials. The lecture complexes, the fighting chambers, the dorms, the mission hall. Varian recalled the short but important time he spent here. And finally, the ghost ship stopped above a huge auditorium. Looking at the familiar building that hosted the entrance ceremony as well as the tutor-pupil ceremony, Varian's mood fluctuated. The first day of college, he was still practicing and hoping to progress in the Murloc Islands. The him back then was completely driven by one goal: earn enough merit points and find Sia. He was courageous but also reckless. He was a bit naive, and didn't know the ways of the world. Not even in his wildest dreams did he imagine back then that his biggest enemy would end up being a sovereign, and two of them at that. Had he known back, would he have backed out? Of course he wouldn't. But the pressure he'd have borne would be too high. The level 2 Varian was still trying to catch up with Narcissus, and to him, Charles was a year-long goal. He was alone from the beginning. He made no friends, and due to Charles, no one was even willing to talk to him. Seth. Varian exhaled lightly and muttered. This man who lost his own family and swore vengeance, the soldier who was ready to give his all to train a pupil, he was Varian's turning point. He encountered many dangers after meeting Seth. The short but intense training from his tutor helped him. But more than the training, Seth asking Sarah to take him on a mission was what really changed the trajectory of his life. Despite the enormous danger and the seemingly certain impossibility of return, Vanished Dungeon turned out to be blessing in disguise. He not only reached level 4, but also got Ghost Ship. Even without Vanished Dungeon, he could have improved his strength, though slowly. But Ghost Ship, to be honest, Varian attributed much of his freedom to it. The two main functions of the ship, stealth and speed, were his foundations. Using its broken space subsystem, Boo created a teleportation formation. This was his last protection. Varian dared to reveal his level to Evander and ask for apprenticeship only because he was sure of escaping with Boo's teleportation in case Evander wanted to capture him. Once he was Evander's disciple, there was no turning back. Varian benefited from a strong backing and lived the short time peacefully. Unlike before, he didn't worry about Xander family's attack. Nor did he feel that he would be under the threat of investigation and become a lab rat. Everything was taken care of by Evander and Richard. Truth be told, Varian wanted to meet him. But even if he could sneak inside, there was a high possibility of moles inside Evander's residence. Their comms were also tapped. All in all, it was risky and he'd rather not do it. I'm sorry, Master. Guess you'll have to assume I'm dead for a while until you meet Sarah. His plan was to let Sarah meet with Evander and request for a private meeting. Then she could reveal the truth. But right now, to the world, she was depressed and was hellbent on practice. If she suddenly met with Evander, it'd raise suspicions. So, Sarah had to put on the act for some time. Sarah and me, we both lied to her father quite a few times already. Varian chuckled as he recalled his first meeting with Evander. It was ironic that the man who found away his merit points on the very first day ended up being his master. It was even more ironic that his daughter ended up being his girlfriend. And the most ironic was that Ghost Ship saved his life again. If not for it, he'd be really dead. Boo, thanks. Varian said sincerely. You realized how good I am. Hey. Even though I'm not perfect, I almost am. Just a bit of my memory is missing and I act like a baby. Other than that, I'm the best. Varian's lips twitched and he shifted his focus outward. On the park where Seth convinced him to be his pupil. Right now, 3 cadets, by their uniform, 2 first years and a second year, sat in the pavilion by the lake. Are you sure this isn't some bullshit? The junior guy said with a frown. Yes, my brother is the most talented man in my family and even he is only level 4. The junior girl beside him added. The senior rubbed his forehead and let out an awkward chuckle. I can't lie about what happened in the solar banquet, can I? There's no doubt, he's peak level 5. The girl looked at her senior in confusion. But how? You're in the top 10 of second year and yet you're only barely peak level 5. The senior stared at her to assess whether she's mocking him or was genuinely surprised. Ahahaha. Forgive her for her lack of tact. The junior guy stepped in to ease the tension and continued. But peak level 5 as first year, I remember his aura during the beginning. Level 2. Even though many people buy the official Ambrosian narrative, I don't get it. It feels off. I often wondered if there is something sketchy about it. The senior nodded. He's dead anyway. It doesn't matter. The girl shrugged, causing the guys to nod. But even if he's alive, he was never part of this academy. Sure, he is in the same year as us, but he was never like a cadet. He was like... The senior trailed off as he felt a gust wind from above. They're right. I was never part of this academy. Varian thought as Ghost Ship left the Defense Academy and went straight to the Academy of Sciences. I never fit in. I can't have a normal life. Perhaps, this is one of the prices I have to pay. He looked at the receding campus one last time. I am just a visitor. Soon, the Ghost Ship sneaked into the Academy of Sciences. Varian found Kyle and Maya. Thankfully, they weren't depressed like last time. Or at least that's how they appeared. They immersed themselves in work. It was their way of coping with bad news. Master, do you want to reveal yourself? Boo asked curiously. No. I can reveal that I'm alive, but these guys, if they accidentally reveal it to anyone else, the spies by their side will definitely trouble them. They'll be sad, but also safe. Varian did find a few moles that were spying on Kyle. But he didn't act against them. They were from Julius just to keep an eye out. As long as nothing extraordinary happened, these moles would just watch Kyle and Maya for some time before halting. The Ghost Ship then went straight to Varian's home. During the journey, Varian scrolled through the file of one man. Eric. Most of his information was secretive and what he could find didn't answer his questions. No matter how stupid a level 7 was, it was impossible to be so stupid as Eric. Revealing his request during a banquet just like that, either he had screws loose in head or, I hope he's just gone crazy and not the other option. This was one of the rare prisons that could hold even level 7s. Rare because rather than arresting High Awakener criminals, the Federation preferred shooting them down. After all, keeping High Awakeners locked cost a lot. For instance, each cell in the prison was customized for different paths. A space cell had formations that made teleportation impossible. Of course, they were hella expensive and even took space stones. That's why, unless it was absolutely necessary, Space Awakeners were killed off. At the moment, Evander was standing in front of a cell. Behind him were 2 guards in combat suit, acting as his escorts. The cell was made of a pitch-black metal alloy. The locked-up person would have trouble seeing anything, even if they had super eyesight. The alloy was also capable of absorbing sound. So, the whole cell was deathly quiet 24/7. In short, the captive in the cell couldn't see or hear anything. It was a terrible condition to be in and the weak-willed simply couldn't handle it. Not only that, the cell didn't have any exit. It was closed from all sides. The only way in and out was a small teleportation formation in the prison. Fortunately, the finances of the prison weren't too bad and they were able to afford the mini teleportation formation. It costed far less than an actual teleportation formation, but it still was 15% of the complete expenditure. I hope I can get something useful. Evander squinted his eyes and tapped on the black wall. A blue screen popped up and scanned his iris. Then a small treasure opened and sensed his aura. A glowing circle appeared on the black wall. Eric, it's not too late. Who instructed you? Evander asked with a stern voice. He was only met with silence. Evander clenched his fists and wished to smash the fucker to pieces. The only problem was, he couldn't. On the charges of revealing crucial information at inappropriate place, Evander brought Eric to investigation. But with Julius Xander meddling in the affair, he didn't get the permission to physically interrogate. That meant he couldn't beat the crap out Eric and torture a confession out. So, he settled for the next best thing. The Black Room. It was 3 days already, but the bastard hadn't opened his mouth. Eric, you are a supervisor, damn it. You swore to protect the cadets, yet you pushed one of them to death with your own hands. Evander's voice turned chilly and a scaring killing intent leaked out of him. The guards behind him, both level 7s, shivered uncontrollably as their legs wobbled and they almost collapsed on the spot. I didn't push him to death. A hoarse voice came from the glowing circle. Evander smashed his fist into the wall, the hair on his neck standing straight. Are you fucking kidding me? First, you asked him $20,000 to search for the information. Even a fool would know it's important. And you reveal it in a banquet, for fuck's sake. You also knew about Varian's performance and were aware of exactly how many people were spying on him and paying attention to your conversation. Don't bullshit me. Again, there was no response. Evander stood in the silence for a few minutes before he said in a dry tone. The boy is dead. You achieved what you wanted. Now. Evander's fist smashed into the black wall again, leaving a dent. Now fucking tell me the mastermind so I can avenge him. His chest heaved up and down as Evander felt an aching pain. It was the same pain he felt when he realized he lost Sam. It was definitely faint, but it was the same pain. Fucking tell me, you son of a bitch. Evander lashed at the wall again, causing the cubicle cell to move a few meters away. He lost his mother. He spent a year wallowing in his pain. He barely survived the entrance competition, and even after entering the academy, he was suppressed by those self-entitled assholes. Evander kept smashing the cell, causing more and more dents in the wall. The alloy, which boasted to withstand even level 9s, was creaking uncontrollably with each punch. Nobody teamed up with him for a mission and he had to go with second years. And despite all this, despite all the oppression he faced, you know what he did? Evander slowed down the punches. His voice was incomparably low as his breathing turned completely ragged. He saved them, endangering himself. He nearly died. If not for some shit luck, he'd have died. Period. Forget his genius, forget his achievements, just his spirit. Don't you hold any shame acting despicably on such an individual? It wasn't my choice. Eric's voice came. His words only enraged Evander further as he sped up, smashing the cell. Cracks started to appear on the wall. Choice. You always have a choice. I don't understand how you see yourself as a human anymore. Why don't you just die? You cherish your sorry life so much. A pathetic peak level 7. Bah. Vivar. That boy would have beat you in no time. Evander didn't want to speak out his disciple's name. It was too painful. He was only met with the pathetic silence. Crack. 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 Evander pulled back his arm and twisted his torso. The next moment, space nearly cracked as he punched the goddamn wall open. Boom. It blew into pieces and revealed the weak man inside. Despite no torture, Eric looked he was hollowed out. With bloodshot eyes, a bent back and chattering teeth, he resembled anything but his powerful supervisor image. It might have elected sympathy, but Evander only felt disgust. He raised his fist to beat down the man and extract a confession. He was done following the rules. Right then a light flashed and Eric disappeared. Evander's body blurred and he appeared on the ground, instantly climbing the underground prison. In front of him was a short man in a red uniform. He was holding Eric in one hand and looking up at the sky with an amusing gaze. Rohak, this place is off your limits. Fuck off and give that pest to me. He has a confession to make. Evander didn't give any pleasantries and went straight to the point. Whoa, easy there, High General. Rohak said with an exaggerated expression. I'm not in a mood to play with you. Evander's aura spiked. Rohak's expression cooled down. No place is off limits for 5th Shura Squad. Besides, this time I'm on an official visit. He opened a file and shared it to Evander. Evander had a bad premonition, but after reading through, his expression was completely dark. As you can see, Eric is protected by the law. There is no clear evidence against him. Holding up a level 7 for so long for personal reasons is just as selfish. Evander clenched his fists and his body trembled uncontrollably. Eric will be transferred to Zern Planetoid. This is a direct order from Sovereign Julius. He said he didn't hope to see you kill a High Awakener. Upon hearing the name Julius, Evander cooled down. He wanted to fight, but for the safety of Sarah, he chose to endure it. Ha ha ha. Now then, I'll be taking Mr. Eric. See ya, Evander. Rohak disappeared with a laugh. Anna's green combat uniform was in sharp contrast to her usual maid clothing. Her nonchalance as a maid disappeared and was replaced by a serious commanding aura. Due to emergencies, she was called back to frontlines and was stationed on one of the fiercest planetoids. Unlike Rena Planetoid that Varian and others visited back then, this planetoid was far larger, almost the size of Moon. The average levels of the soldiers on this planetoid was level 6. The Abyssals as well as humans heavily invested in this planetoid. The supreme commanders of both sides were level 9. Due to a certain someone, Anna was forced to take up this role. Miss. Anna's cold demeanor melted as a worrying expression appeared over his face. After Varian's death, Sarah completely shut herself off. She no longer smiled or talked. Heck, except for practice, she wasn't willing to come out of her room. Despite acting like that, Anna's keen space sense noticed Sarah suddenly crying in the middle of practice. It was just that, Sarah was so deeply involved in practice that even she didn't notice the tears rolling down her cheeks. If you don't see my corpse, don't believe I'm dead. Anna recalled his words and wished they were true. But Varian had literally nothing to back up that claim. He was certainly a genius, but when even level 9s could die, being a genius didn't make one immune from death. Anna was tempted to console Sarah and reveal his words multiple times. But she refrained. Instead of giving her false hope which would ultimately shatter and break her down even more, it was better for Sarah to deal with her feelings. Anna's heart ached at the pain the little girl had to go through, but she steeled herself. Miss, I'm sorry, but you have to grow up. In this fragile world of ours, lives are easily lost. Now you lost him, maybe you'll lose me tomorrow. The best we can do is to live bravely and do our best. I hope you can realize and accept it. The realization was bound to be painful. Anna knew for certain that if she kept watching Sarah in this pain, she wouldn't be able to bear it. Even if it was false, she'd reveal Varian's words to her. That's why, Anna accepted this sudden duty due to Evander's request. Anna's figure disappeared and she appeared above the planetoid. Her space sense locked onto a fast-approaching Abyss spaceship. In a moment, their level 8s and one level 9 dashed out of the spaceship. Anna checked her comm and realized that the reinforcements would be there in a minute. Taking a deep breath, Anna channeled her space power. At the same time, the commander of the planetoid, a level 9, also shot into the air. His huge fire wings pushed him right beside the intruding level 9 who flapped his ice wings and they both glared at Anna. For 1 minute. Anna sighed and her figure disappeared. Her mind thought back to the incident that led to all this. Shortly after Varian's incident, Bali announced he was going into a retreat. Naturally, everyone opposed. Bali was a dual awakener and a peak level 9 in both paths. What the hell would he achieve by retreat? Besides, as the captain of 6th Shura Squad, they simply can't let him leave. Short breaks were fine, but long breaks for seclusion? No way. Bali said it's important. His strength was likely going to improve. Despite that, everyone disagreed. Except Evander. He convinced the senior military leaders and made a plan to make up for Bali's absence. One of the requirements was Anna. Boom. Gotcha. The space was torn apart and the air howled as it was sucked into the gap. The two level 9 abyssals clutched their stomachs with a fierce expression. Even though they tried to dodge, the space blast was too quick and too lethal. Humph. The abyssals flapped their wings, causing winds of fire and ice to blow as they shot towards Anna. Cough. Cough. Anna wiped the blood at the corner of lips. Her pale face showed no expression as she condensed a sword out of space power. The longer I fight, the more disadvantageous I'll be. Anna frowned, but she couldn't not fight. Or these two level 9s would decimate the human side. Not only that, Anna looked at the two level 8s in the distance with killing intent. She tried to kill them, but with these two level 9s, she couldn't concentrate. She did manage to hold them from going down on the human army, but she wouldn't be able to do that for long. Where the fuck are reinforcements? Incoming. Followed by a loud announcement, a huge black bird shot towards the level 9s. Screech. With a loud roar, the lion head opened its mouth to bite off the fire abyssal while the griffin's paws smashed at the water abyssal. This old man will take care of you pests. That's my place. Two more voices came as Richard and Eve Xander appeared in front of the abyssals. Boom. Boom. Richard's mental power knocked out his opponent while Eve transformed into a flame phoenix and slapped off his pick. Sigh. Anna sighed and joined the fight. The sky continued to shake as each attack reverberated across thousands of miles. The level 8s on either bases locked onto each other. On multiple locations, skirmishes stared as either abyssals or humans initiated attacks. The 6 awakeners fought in a remote area to avoid collateral. With the addition of reinforcements, the tempo of battle was gradually balanced. Boom. Boom. After an hour of intense fight, everything settled. Anna was back in her command room, except this time, there were 3 old men in addition. No. I did. Fuck off. No. You fuck off. Richard and Eve went into a staring contest, causing Anna to snap. Shut up. You old fogies. Your young masters died and yet you. Anna shut her mouth midway. Eve Xander's old face was pale, but he just shook his head. I always told Narcissus to treat people fairly, if not equally. But he looked down on everyone. Julius pampered him to no end and he somehow ended up provoking shadow guardians. Anna didn't feel any sympathy towards Narcissus. In her eyes, he was a trash. But Eve dedicated his life to safeguarding Earth. His brother was Julius' father and a sovereign. During his reign, Xanders were more trusted on Earth than the Federation itself. But after Julius, things changed. Xanders went from Guardians of Earth to one of the 3 families. Eve, he tried his best. Yet, he couldn't oppose Julius' orders. There were many people like him in the Xanders, but alas. Maybe we are stronger than the last generation, but morally, we have fallen so low. The 3rd old man in the room sighed in melancholy. He was Liam Xander, obviously from the Xander family. He used to train the Xander kids, but after seeing how they were turning out, he applied for the reinforcements department and now traveled from planetoid to planetoid, proving emergency assistance. I won't talk about you Xanders, it's just tragic. But my young master didn't die. Richard said as a matter of fact. And how do you know that? Anna raised her brow. If there was really some clue, then she'd immediately inform Sarah. I don't. I just believe him. Richard stated, causing Anna, Eve and Liam to shake their heads. They didn't bother arguing with him, however. After the long fight, all of them were exhausted and preferred peace. How is the ruins exploration this time? Anna asked out of boredom. This was first of the 8 months, so the first planet's ruins would be open. The same crap. The Shadow Order stole some stuff. There were reports claiming to have seen Enigma. Liam said lazily. Boring. Anything interesting going on? Anna changed to a new set of aura crystals and asked. The kidnapping cases have increased. Liam reported. The Uranus cluster? Yeah. I don't know precisely, but it must be because of some crazy treasures in the black market. These gangs always want those treasures. Liam said with a disgusted expression. Black market sold a lot of treasures, on behalf of Abyssals. These treasures had miraculous effects, though they came with costs. Perhaps this time, it was a treasure that could loosen the bottleneck or something. These gangs will compete for the treasure and in the process, kidnappings increase. Once they get the treasure, the crimes would increase. Why don't you just go and kill them off? Anna's face turned rosy and her recovery was evident. Do you think I don't want to? Liam muttered in annoyance. These gangs have hideouts. They are back the Shadow Order and the Chaos families. Then it's truly problematic. Anna sighed. Shadow Order and Chaos families lived in secret realms. Unlike on Earth, their secret realms in the Uranus cluster cities were present in space. Space was just too wide for them to search the secret realms. And just like on Earth, they might have hid their secret realms. Basically, even if the gangs were eliminated, the Order and Chaos families could nurture them in no time. It's not like I can kill the gangs. My hands are tied. I'm Boo. Liam's calm buzzed and he stood up. See, I'm busy. Something came up on X-32 planetoid. Waving his hand, Liam transformed into a griffin and reached his space shuttle. Richard and Eve departed shortly after him. They were assigned different planetoids. Sigh. Before Anna could sigh properly, the assistant barged in. Commander, a large-scale battle in the SH-193 area. The level 8s are on TH. Before he could finish, Anna teleported to the area and her eyes narrowed. Trash. Another battle ensued. Far away, Emperor Abyss, Hayden was seated on the throne. In front of him were old men and women of abyssal race were seated across a semicircular table. With all due respect, Your Majesty, I think we're running out of time. An old abyssal said with an anxious expression. Yes. Let's just go all out and get the civilization core. If we didn't get Devis' legacy, we have no chance of winning the Providence trial. Yes, it's already been so long. Who would have thought that humans were this resilient? I suggest we go ahead and exterminate them regardless of the cost. I concur. Me too. Me 3. One by one, 8 of the 20 elders raised their hands. Hayden looked at them with indifferent eyes and said. Are you senile? Why, Your Majesty? The elders who raised their hands trembled. Even though Hayden advocated to save as many lives as possible, he didn't hesitate to punish. And legends say, his punishments made one wish for death. Hayden took a breath to control his anger and said. If we were to go all out against humans, we'll sacrifice almost 90% of the 8 abysses. But we'll get the legacy. With it, we can strengthen ourselves for the trial against Zions. The male elder was stubborn despite his fear. Yes, we can do it. But we have only a few decades before the trial. Even if we get the legacy, we'll have only so much time to use it to our advantage. It's not like we can instantly grow stronger with legacy. If we had a few centuries, I'd agree with your proposal. But we have only a few decades. If we sacrifice the 8 abysses in the solar system, even if we increase our strengths, we'll definitely lose in the Providence trial. Hayden explained with a contorted expression. The elders fell silent as they digested his painful words. Then, how long? A female elder muttered. How long would your method take, Your Majesty? Was what she wanted to, but didn't dare to ask. There is one plan that is about to hatch. Hayden's eyes shone with wisdom. Once it starts, we can save a lot of our manpower. He looked into the distance and said in a light voice. If it really works well, then humans will kill themselves in a civil war. A desolate home. There were pictures of him and a little girl over the walls. Eric looked at the little girl and clenched his fists. Don't worry, you'll be fine. Soon. He immediately sealed off his home and entered the basement. A white table sat in the middle of the black-coated basement. On top of the table laid a red sphere. Eric controlled his breath and gently tapped it. With a click, the sphere activated and emitted gray light which slowly morphed into an abyssal. Prince Abrax. Eric greeted politely, withholding his rage. HM. You're that human, Eric? Prince Abrax tapped the armrest on his throne and yawned. But his red eyes shone with a fierce glint and showed that he was just playing around. I'm Eric. I did what you asked with Varian. Now can you please release my granddaughter? Eric swallowed the humiliation and begged. Right. I'll order the shadow dogs. Abrax nodded nonchalantly. Then he looked playfully at Eric and smiled. But I didn't expect you to be so cold-hearted. You know it could be dangerous and yet you went ahead with the plan. Eric's fingers dug into his palm and blood dripped on the floor. Yet, he didn't show any anger. He simply said. Varian is a genius, but I want my granddaughter to be alive. Ha ha ha. Well said. Prince Abrax clapped and commended. Your granddaughter will return to you safely. But of course, this is only the beginning of our deal. Eric's face paled. Once you enter the abyss, there is no going back. Abrax said and cut off the communication. Far away in the demon abyss, Abrax propped his chin on his hand as he smiled widely. Varian, Enigma, it seems like it's true. Ha 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 ha. His laughter resounded throughout his castle. The maids and guards were accustomed to this and went on with their work. Meanwhile, an abyssals in the communication department room of the castle received a letter and started reading it with wide eyes. Even though humans would be extinct before this Varian grew up, killing him is not a bad credit. Especially since he's related to Enigma. Abrax tapped a human tech comm and a few holograms popped in front of him. After his father, Demon King's attempt to destroy Rena Planetoid was blocked by Julius Xander, he was angry and vented in the capital city. Abrax happened to be there at that time and learned about a mission His Majesty the Emperor said passingly. Kill Varian, he's weird. It wasn't an important mission in the first place. But Demon King wanted to redeem himself of his two failures, destruction of the Holy Altar and missing the ghost ship. He thought killing Varian was easy and decided to destroy all geniuses of Earth. Even though it wasn't very important, at least he could be satisfied that he finished one of His Majesty's mission. But he failed again. This third failure put him into rage. Abrax initially thought that this Varian was some big shot. Otherwise, his father wouldn't be so angry, right? So, he ordered a deep investigation. However, after realizing he was only a level 5, he went through Varian's life events. They were as plain as it could get. A typical genius nurtured by Evander, getting lucky and finding ambrosia, rising faster than peers. Abrax didn't take it seriously and turned his attention back to Enigma. Why? Because after Demon King attacked Rena Planetoid, Enigma killed the most talented princes and princesses of Demon Abyss. And that included his elder brother and younger sister. Abrax didn't think he was a kind person. But he sure loved his family. So, he found everything he could about Enigma and dived deep in. But like everyone else, he didn't find anything extra. Her origin. Her powers. Her connections. Nothing. Until he noticed a faint connection between Enigma and Varian. Enigma had Shadow Guardians investigate the 3 clans of Earth right after Varian disappeared. Then she attacked them as expected but abruptly stopped right after Varian appeared. Initially, Abrax thought it was a coincidence. That was until he went back and found another record. Enigma's appearance during Varian's entrance test. Shortly after the Abyss Duke, an Abyss Prince also reached the site. The prince found a shocking fact. Enigma never left. Why? No one knew back then, but now, Abrax was sure. It was because of this boy called Varian. Abrax decided to kill Varian. If he managed to make Enigma feel even 1% of his grief when he lost his siblings, he'd be satisfied. So, Abrax ordered the Shadow Order dogs to assassinate Varian when he went to shopping with Sarah. In a surprising turn of events, Varian somehow survived. Abrax was frustrated, but he didn't give up. He dug deeper and looked for things he could exploit. It cost him resources, connections, and time, but he found out one more thing. Varian's request. It was never mentioned. Never fulfilled. He also deeply studied Varian's life, his actions and words. Especially how he spent a complete year in depression, but suddenly decided to risk everything to join the academy. He wants something. He wants it badly. Abrax concluded. So, the next step was to find out his wish. But there was a problem. Only Supervisor Eric knew about his wish. But Eric had a cute granddaughter. His son and daughter-in-law were both soldiers and died on duty. Eric retired from the front lines to take care of her. He loved her so much and spoiled her. She was his weakness. Once the weakness was found, Abrax acted fast. He spent more resources and connections, he contacted the Shadow Order, the Chaos families, and finally had her kidnapped. It cost him a lot more than he initially thought. After knowing Varian's wish, Abrax checked the database for Sia. Of course, he found nothing. He thought he wasted everything. On the other hand, he just got the news about Varian's insane performance in the solar trial. As a last-ditch attempt, he had Eric reveal Varian's wish in the public. Who would have thought that it was really something sensitive and did something he never could? Varian was dead. But more importantly, someone from the Shadow Guardians, more likely Enigma, appeared on the scene and killed Narcissus. If this didn't prove that Enigma and Varian were connected, he didn't know what will. Enigma, I hope you're feeling the pain of losing a loved one. It's a pity, I'll never know who he was to you, but hey, all I want is your pain. Abrax covered his face and muttered. After his glee, Abrax felt empty. He didn't kill Enigma after all. Prince. Prince. A young abyssal rushed into the throne room. Except for the maids and the guards, this thin abyssal was the only frequenter to the throne room. What is it? Abrax raised a brow expectantly. Demon King has read your report about Enigma and Varian. He confirmed that Shadow Guardians, no, Enigma herself is attacking the members of Xander family. He is pleased and mentioned this matter to His Majesty. You are assigned a task. The Foreign Affairs officer said excitedly. Be by His Majesty himself? Abrax stood and muttered in disbelief. By Abyss Emperor himself, what an honor. This is something I will never shrink from. Abrax straightened his back and walked down to the messenger and grabbed the letter. The plan in Uranus cluster cities is near completion. See if you can assist in the city of Valos. If you can't, don't force it. Valos. Prince Abrax narrowed his eyes. He looked at his attendant and said. Start preparations. I'm going to the Despair Abyss. Valos City, here I come. This is the end of Volume 3. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for the feedback about the pacing. Next volume is Hero in the Shadow. To those who want to stock up, a request. Please stock up after this month is over. Only 4 days left, our ranking is at stake and it's in your hands to make it or break it. Thank you very much for your support and I wish you a good reading. The small garden in the front yard filled with purple flowers was a memory of his mother and her love for gardening. But to support him and Sia, she worked overtime and sacrificed her one little hobby. Rest in peace, Mom, Varian muttered softly as he looked at the swaying flowers. Their scent, they had the same scent as her. Like all other times he thought of his mother, Varian still felt pain. But now, he also felt a sense of tranquility. Her wish, even during her last moments, she wanted him to help Sia. Sia is hiding things from me. Varian closed his eyes and sighed. He only wished she could tell him her problems. But don't worry. I'll find out HR problems and keep her safe. He smiled before coughing awkwardly. She's stronger than me at the moment. Level 7 already. Varian looked at his rooms with nostalgia. The posters on the walls, the figurines of the sovereigns, the guides on how to be a good and upright awakener. Somehow, Varian felt like fate was laughing at him. He went from dreaming to joining the army and being a member of the Shadow Guardians, an official terrorist outfit. Varian circled Sia's room and sat at the dining table. It was a small round table with 3 seats. Varian had his pre-assigned seat. For as long as he could remember, the dining table was a place of sweet memories. He looked at the now empty chairs and sighed. Amanda was gone forever. Sia refused to return. I will bring you back, Varian muttered, and his gaze fell on the final empty chair. Even after Sia came back, it would still be empty. No. Sarah, HM. Varian smiled lightly. Before he could immerse in a good future, loud noises caused him to frown. Varian looked at the entrance in confusion. Pen this door. Ya bitch, use this key, with a frown, Varian asked. Boo, who is it? Master, there are some gangsters outside. They're trying to unlock the door. They've failed thrice already, they're preparing to attack. Gangsters? Varian raised a brow before he patted his forehead. This is a pretty low-end neighborhood. Even though things like gangsters on Earth are low, they aren't impossible. Still, those bastards wouldn't be able to open the door no matter how hard they tried. After all, Butler Richard made sure to fortify the house well. Open the door. Varian exhaled. He didn't want his home to be attacked. Creak. The door snapped open and 3 men staggered into the home. They were all tall men with weird tattoos all over their arms. The most noticeable feature of the 3 was the injuries they had all over their bodies. They seemed to have taken healing potions, as there were only scabs, but with their half-torn clothes and disheveled faces, it didn't take a genius to guess they were coming right after a fight. Without giving a look at Varian, they tumbled onto the floor and lay down in the living room like dead fishes. Huff. Huff. That motherfuckers. They aren't giving us a break. The biggest man out of the bunch snarled, with his chest heaving up and down. No shit, boss. But we got it, didn't we? The leaner man of the 3 lay down next to him and grinned. Of course we did. We are rich, brothers. Rich. Rich. The bald man next to him exclaimed with sparkling eyes. Varian watched the trio with doubt. Did they ignore me purposefully, or were they so tired they didn't notice me? Who the fuck are you guys? He asked lightly. Huh? You pest? The bald man turned his head and growled at him. Do you want to die that much? Shut the fuck up and we'll let you live for a few more minutes. Varian shook his head in pity. He didn't want to cause violence in his home, but he could always throw them into ghost ship and beat them up. That wouldn't count as violence at home, right? The boss thought Varian's sigh as his resignation to death. He felt a tingling pleasure at ruling over others' death and laughed out. Ha ha ha. Since you're dying anyway, we will show you who we really are. He said and tapped on his comm. The video of a news channel popped up. It was an ongoing interview of a rather sensual woman with a cold man. Sir Plosh, what are the main events in the Mercury ruins this year? She smiled sweetly. Ilocan flower appeared. Gariki was stolen again by the shadows. And I'm done. The man stood up and teleported away. Sir. Sir. There are still 2 minutes left. The boss looked at Varian's confused gaze and coughed awkwardly. Wrong channel. The wrong channel, I say. Here you go. A male reported stood at a rather desolate site of what looked to be a mine. With eyes that demanded attention, he shouted with blood-boiling rage. Another Roshnia mine theft incident. 15 dead and 3 tunnels destroyed. The agencies have said they'll look into it, but The boss closed the comm and grinned widely at Varian. Come, show me the despair. You guys are thieves. Varian titled his head. He thought they were something more menacing. Like members of Shadow Order or agents of Abyssals. AI, his standards were too high. Boy. Are you not afraid? The lean man slowly stood up and glared down at him. I can always report you to the police. Why aren't you afraid? Varian didn't get up from his seat as he kept an eye on the three. His words elicited laughter from the three. Ha ha ha. Even the lean man collapsed on the ground and clutched his stomach. I didn't joke. Varian sighed inwardly. It'd be great if my actual jokes can get this much laughter, but oh well. He didn't want to think much about that topic. Finally, they stopped laughing and the boss smiled playfully at Varian. A great pressure erupted out of him and enveloped the entire house. Peak level 5. Everyone in this neighborhood is fucking poor. With your age, what level are you at? Level 1? 2 if you're a genius. Seeing Varian staying still, he thought Varian was frozen in place. See. Just some of my aura and you can't even move. The boss was about to discuss his plan on killing Varian cruelly when the space suddenly solidified. The trio's expressions froze as they realized they couldn't move. They suddenly recalled an odd detail. They tried to open the door multiple times and failed. For a normal house, that was extremely odd. Then, even under their aura, this boy didn't shed a drop of sweat nor did his face pale. From the beginning, he was playing with them. The trio's faces went pale as they nearly had a heart stroke. Varian propped his chin on his hands and his eyes narrowed. You were saying something? Apparently, he and Sarah were targets of assassination. It was a pity that they too had no information on the real mastermind. But seriously, isn't Boo enjoying this too much? Varian tapped his chin and thought. Please. And not there. We'll reveal everything. I'll even reveal the secrets of my grandfather. Fuck you guys. I can reveal both of their secrets. Just promise that you'll kill me. Mwahahaha. Varian listened to his little ghost's sadistic laughter and sighed in disappointment. If only Boo was like him. He never tortured anyone. What a morally upright person. I just outsource it. After a few minutes, Boo gave him a military salute and reported its findings. Master, they know some of the secret entrances to Roshnium mines. They went in and stole. But they couldn't sit still and brag in one of the clubs. They were followed and had to fight their way out. Serves them right. Varian clicked his tongue. Did I ever brag my achievements? You're the one to talk. Boo almost said. Varian rolled his eyes at Boo's silence and asked. What's going on with Roshnium? It's a precious metal only available on Earth. Previously Gonbald clan controlled the mines. But now Gonbald who? Boo looked at Varian with a serious gaze as if asking. Did you really forget? Varian nodded. Master, remember when Enigma attacked the 3 vassal clans of Xander's when you were in the Lost Dungeon? We sneaked into Aster clan. The other 2 clans were Gonbold and Martin. Gonbold clan pretty much controlled Roshnium mines on Earth. Oh. I remember. Varian nodded with an understanding expression. You totally forgot. Boo wanted to yell, but as a good ghost, it controlled its expression and continued. After Enigma pretty much dismantled the Gonbold clan, the Roshnium mines fell into new powers. According to some news, the Gonbold clan had shady deals with Shadow Order. They used to sell the metal. After Gonbold clan fell, Shadow Order released rewards for those who can get the Roshnium metal. These fools happened to know one of the secret tunnels in the mines. Fools because if it was a clever person, they'd have made a fortune in silence and never reveal any traces. Seriously, what kind of idiot would brag about their crimes in a public place? Varian recalled the news from earlier. Shadow Order also stole Gariki metal and now they're also procuring Roshnium. According to the dark web, kidnapping cases were also on the rise. Just what the fuck is happening? He growled in annoyance. If only this Shadow Order didn't exist. What about their criminal records? They each have at least 10 innocent lives under their belt. Just like now, they barged into homes while escaping and killed the residents. Throw them on planetoid frontlines, Varian said as if it was not a big deal. Pardon? They are a waste of air. Drug them and throw them to abyssals. They will at least kill one or two before they die. Varian said in a bone-chilling voice. He was grateful that he didn't encounter a gang like this when he was younger. He really didn't want others to be victims. Ghost ship took off from Earth. In a few minutes, they reached a planetoid and stopped above a border area where level 4s were deployed on both sides. Boo injected the 3 living trashes with rage-inducing drugs and threw them onto the abyssals. The trio was in a berserk mode and killed 2 abyssals before being killed. 2. Not bad, I guess. Varian didn't feel sorry for them. Then Ghost Ship started the journey towards Valos City in Uranus cluster cities. Enigma told him he could take the space shuttles of Shadow Guardians, but he declined. Though eccentric, Boo was more reliable. How long is it going to take? Varian asked as he looked at Earth, which was quickly shrinking into a blue dot. Near that blue dot was a red dot that was the moon. Valos City, 10 days. Say what? Varian almost flipped the table. Behind him was the vast, empty black space. There were occasionally 1 or 2 glittering lights, a patrolling space shuttle or a distant planetoid. Of course, he could turn back and always glance at the 2 bright suns, but come on. 10 days of travel was too much. Boo was flabbergasted at Varian's reaction. Master, do you think we are going on a vacation to another city? We are almost traveling from one end of the solar system to another end. Of course, it'd take time. Even if you take the best space shuttles of the Federation, it'd take 2 weeks at least. Varian's shoulders slumped. No other way? If I wasn't damaged, heck, if I could repair my space subsystem even a bit, we could reach there like in 1 day. Varian covered his face. Well, then teleportation formations are the only answer. Varian knew the army was so protective of teleportation formations, but only now did he practically experience it. Suppose a war started and reinforcements needed to be sent, then 10 days of travel time would mean that by the time these reinforcements arrived, the war would have been lost. Teleportation formations have very strict usage requirements. Forget it. Varian waved his hand. 10 days, he needed to be alone on this ghost. Wait. Boo, wake up those 3. Varian stretched his arms and grinned. Right away. You can go all out, Master. Even though I limited their strength, they're peak level SXS anyway. I will. Varian's smile widened. Soon, he entered the training room built of reinforced walls. Wooah. The 3 ex-assassins opened their eyes and saw a young man grinning at them. Their minds were cloudy and they couldn't remember anything. All they had in their mind was one command. Kill. Space distorted as lightning roiled and the wind was punched. Varian looked at their attacks and raised his fist. Yes. Ghost Ship took no breaks and passed Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and Uranus. After 2.5 days of further travel, they neared a group of glowing cities in the dark space. By normal human standards, these cities were all far apart by tens of thousands of miles. But viewing them from Ghost Ship, they were incredibly close. Like a cluster of shining stars. Master, we've reached the Uranus cluster cities. Boo was gobsmacked as it stared at the person who seemed to be painted in red. A large part of his back was charred. His left arm dropped like it was disjointed and there were countless holes on his body, with pieces of missing flesh. Even his breathing was ragged as he dragged himself out of the room and walked into the shower room. Varian didn't utter a word as he downed a high-quality healing potion under the shower and transformed into his half-tree state. His hands grew into branches, his legs resembled a tree trunk and his feet were now close to roots. The water from the shower slowly washed away the blood on his face, revealing a satisfied expression. Monster. Battle maniac. Boo clutched its head and exclaimed. During the training, it was supposed to check on him. But except for the emergency system, which automatically acts if he's in danger, Varian didn't grant Boo access to the training room. Who knew he was training like this? Boo wanted to lecture Varian. Continuous battles like this would easily cause hidden injuries to accumulate. Once you reach high levels, these injuries would come back to bite you. But then it remembered something. Varian was, peculiar to put it nicely. Could someone who broke something as fundamental as 3 divine paths per person really be held down by common sense stuff like hidden injuries? I don't know what kind of monster Master is. Thankfully, only Sarah knows his other paths. But hey, I was expecting way more reaction from her. Why did she accept it so simply? Boo was frustrated. If Sarah was so utterly shocked that she couldn't speak a word for hours, then Boo would feel that someone else was also sharing its burden. But no. She just asked a few questions and let him off the hook. Damn it. I even prepared popcorn to watch you interrogate him. This cute ghost is disappointed in you, Sarah Albert. I'm Team Sia. Unlike Sarah, she'll interrogate Master well. He he he. Boo tried to chuckle in an evil manner. Ho ho, Sarah. Interrogate? Varian's voice suddenly cut off its laughter. As he just came out of training, he was exuding a scary killing intent. It was so severe that even Boo paled like it saw some ghost and blurted out. Sarah, I thought she'd interrogate, ask you more about your divine paths. Boo didn't add that it wanted to see Varian interrogated. Varian arched a brow at Boo's reaction. Then noticing the situation, he pulled back his killing intent. Sorry about that, Boo. Why yes. And Sarah? She's not the type to pry into secrets. Varian shrugged. Even when he revealed to her that he was the dreamer, she didn't ask much about it. It just wasn't in her personality to pry for secrets. If he revealed it, she'd listen. But she'd usually not take the initiative to ask. The academy should have begun already. Did she get a chance to meet Master? They must be worried. Still, Varian wasn't too worried about it. They'd meet sooner or later. Boo, get to Valos City. This is the address. Varian tapped on his comm and displayed the solar coordinates. Boo nodded and the ghost ship streaked towards one of the 20 cities in the cluster. As they approached, the sight changed from a shining object in the space to a vast, disc-shaped city. The first thing Varian observed was naturally the size of the city. It was huge. It's roughly 10,000 square miles, Master. Well. Varian nodded. As someone who studied a bit of history, he equated this to be approximately 3 times the size of old Earth's largest city. Wait, what's that? Varian raised a brow and peered through the glass window. The city was built on a huge disk. But a disk had 2 sides. On one side was a normal city with skylines, commercial complexes, residential areas, public spaces. Of course, there were also hallmarks of any human habitations of this era, tons and tons of hologram. He could glimpse at a few of them even from space. Though it's because he had enhanced eyesight, those holograms were the proof that the city above the disk was a normal city. The problem was with the bottom city. It too had skylines, but they weren't fancy or tall. They looked sturdy and exuded a rather heavy bearing. Some of these buildings were just outright ugly aesthetically. But there was no fashion police. There was only military. This other city at the bottom of the disk was filled with rather familiar military facilities. Military bases spanning miles. Fortified buildings affixed with the latest defense weapons that could pulverize even level 7s. Training halls filled with soldiers of all ranks practicing their asses off. I can't see more. No matter how much he tried, he only saw a black fog. It's a protective treasure or a new technology, Master, Boo said nonchalantly. Do you want us to sneak in? Varian thought for a moment and shook his head. Forget it. Let's go to the address. Maintaining its stealth mode, the ghost ship moved towards the residential side of Valos. I know space cities in clusters have huge military bases, but this is just ridiculous. Varian sighed as the ghost ship entered the atmosphere of Valos. It was a bright city, or at least it seemed like one from the distance. Up close, Varian saw that along with the skylines, there were a lot of slum-like areas in the city. From the height of a few miles, he saw the cityscape of almost 100 miles. It was like a microcosm of the city. There were uneven and rusty apartments. And there were floating, shining complexes. There were dirty streets filled with wary residents. And then there were spending neighborhoods filled with precious medical gardens, 24/7 security, and the best training facilities. The strong contrast told Varian why Valos got its title. The City of Depravity. Then Varian dropped in an alley close to the neighborhood and stepped on the Valos city for the first time. By now, he was already wearing the face mask treasure Enigma presented him. His features went from handsome to ordinary, yet his temperament was hard to conceal. Even though he didn't try to, he attracted attention as he made his way towards the apartment. The automated neighborhood security was taken care of by Boo, and he was standing in front of the apartment in a minute. Varian tapped his comm and clicked on the final file recently sent by Enigma herself. He found it odd that she was following this relatively small mission, but perhaps it was because of Sia. This is your first mission. If it was anyone else, I'd have said, I don't expect much from you, just don't screw over. But since it's you, show me what you can do. This is the contact of your partner for the mission, Y7-2387A, OP. Is that a challenge? Varian's lips twitched. Why was she making him sound like a monster? He's just an ordinary 18-year-old guy, okay? Varian contacted the partner and waited. Even though he disliked working with people, he decided not to make a fuss out of it now. Right from his position, Varian could see a slum outside the neighborhood walls. Earth also had poor people. But this was just at another level. How are people even living here? What the fuck is the govern? I thought I had to pick you up at the spaceport. A crispy voice snapped him out of his thoughts. Varian looked up and saw a red-haired woman smiling at him. She looked to be a year too older than him and was dressed in a red shirt and black shorts. His comm notified a message. Code Agent, X82, S7 as. Identify yourself. After he saw the message, Varian felt that the air turned heavy. There was also a killing intent locked onto him. Varian didn't feel pressurized by the little killing intent but watched the woman curiously. Even though she was still smiling, she was ready to strike at him and take him down the moment he was proved not to be one of them. Is this the life of an agent? S001, X23. He sent the message and the tension dissipated as if it never appeared. The redhead flashed a little smile and gestured him into the building. Varian followed without a word and they entered what he presumed to be her flat. The living room was rather simple. 2 couches. A table. A hollow TV. You like white? The woman gestured him to be seated and asked. Varian sat down and arched a brow. Only then did he realize that he was wearing white clothes in contrast to her black and red. Enigma always wore all black. Was he naturally against the fashion code of Shadow Guardians? I didn't think you had a dress code. Varian shrugged. Theirs. And it's we. She corrected and crossed her legs. New recruit? Uh-oh. Varian nodded and noticed that aura was slowly being effused from one of the rooms. Though not one of high quality, it did indicate that this woman had an aura concentration formation. So, she's either rich or talented and in a good position. While Varian was assessing her, the woman gripped the couch and resisted the urge to facepalm. She looked at him again, this time, with more of a commanding air, and said, "I'm Edwina. You can call me my name in public and in private, refer to me as ma'am." "Yeah, Edwina. You're a newbie. If you want to learn the ropes of the business, respect your seniors." She narrowed her eyes and snapped her fingers. The aura suddenly turned chaotic and locked onto Varian, trying to suffocate him. She wanted to assert dominance and establish a hierarchy. Respect. Varian leaned back into the couch carefreely and snapped his fingers. Boom. The aura lock on him was blown away, resulting in a fierce wind that nearly flipped the table. Edwina stood up instinctually and gawked at him. Respect should be earned. And Edwina, my respect is very pricey. Why, you're a level 6. What the fuck? She pointed at him with wide eyes. Is that weird? Varian was honestly confused. There were many level SXS in Shadow Order. Shadow Guardians must also have a sizable portion of them. No, I was told that you are still young. Not even 20. Edwina sat back on the couch and took deep breaths. After massaging her temples, she put on a normal expression and waved her hand. I saw many newbies die due to recklessness. They think they can do whatever they want once they join the organization. I just wanted to make sure you aren't. It's all right. Varian raised his hand and cut her off. I understand the good intentions behind your actions. Perhaps she was honest. Perhaps she wasn't. Varian wasn't really interested to find out. That's for the best. She nodded and acted like the previous gaffe never happened. She wasn't scared of him though. As a peak level 6 at a meager age of 23, she had her pride. It's just, she didn't want to deteriorate their relationship in case it led to mission failure. You were added to the mission at the last moment and I was honestly surprised. But anyway, these are the details. She said and swiped her comm. A hologram popped up in front of Varian displaying the image of a teenage girl with pink hair. She wore a casual outfit and flashed a rather arrogant smile at the camera. Betty. Age 19. Second-year cadet of Miracle Academy. Only daughter of Colin, one of the level 8s in the military zone and a high-level officer. Target came under the surveillance of unknown groups. Following the cases of other cities, there's a 95% chance she'll kidnapped. Join the academy as a second-year cadet, gain her trust and prevent the kidnap. Varian read the message twice and exhaled exaggeratedly. Bitch please. I'm not doing this. And just like that, Varian's mind started formulating another plan to finish the mission without following the instructions. I will do it. Varian said to cool her down. It's not like he's abandoning the mission. He just knew there were other ways to finish it than getting close with what seemed like an arrogant and bratty rich daughter. But until he learned about this city and the situation, he decided he'd pretend he's following the original plan. It's your first mission, so you might be tense. Edwina's expression eased, but she still had a bit of anger on her face. Then she tapped on her comm again and thick stacks of files popped up. This is the information I collected about Betty. Her likes and dislikes. What she does every day. Her favorite songs. Her clothes. Her most used swear words. Varian looked at Edwina and then at the files and gulped. This is stalking on another level. Then a thought popped up in his mind. Speaking of stalking, did Sia stalk me when I was weak? I've prepared each and every single detail. Study them properly and approach her. Grow her trust in you and this mission will be smooth sailing. Edwina transferred the files to his comm and said with a serious expression. In the end, she casually added. I'll get you an identity by tomorrow. You can join the Miracle Academy. Direct admission to Academy? Varian was surprised. I'm an alumni of the campus. And now I'm a TA. I have that much privilege. Edwina's lips curled up and she practically overflowed with pride. When someone investigates, what are they gonna find out? Varian asked. You are the son of a gang leader of other city. I'm that guy's mistress. His gang is in fight with other gang, and until they're done, you'll live here. As his mistress, me arranging this admission won't be doubted. Varian's lips twitched at his new identity. Son of a gang leader? The fuck? His father was a brave soldier, all right. Can you find something better? Do you think we are running the government? This is the best we can find. Forging identities and making them seem credible is not easy. Edwina rolled her eyes with a displeased expression. In fact, even this forgery was already pushing her to the limits. But thankfully, once they used this identity, no one would doubt Varian's sudden entry to the academy. Nor would they doubt Varian meeting her frequently. Thanks, I guess. Varian said and switched the topic. So, why kidnap her? And who? Edwina stood up and walked out to the terrace. Varian followed. They were currently on the 135th floor and Varian saw the disturbing cityscape once more. Edwina's gaze stayed on one of the buildings in the near distance. It read Miracle Middle School. She turned her gaze away and looked at the city with a mix of derision and frustration. I can tell, you grew up in a safer environment. You don't have to worry about being kidnapped. About the gangs that would threaten you. About the crazy fights that might end up making you a collateral. I envy you people. In fact, most of the Federation was generally safe. But the closer one got to the edge, the more dangerous the planets were. But even they weren't as bad as these space city clusters. Varian didn't reply. A part of him did wonder what would have happened if he was born here. But there were no what-ifs. Let me show you around a bit. Edwina said and gave him a normal face mask. Varian wore it and felt Edwina touch his shoulder. The space distorted and the next moment, they were in the middle of a bustling but chaotic street. Fresh sea lion tendrils. Special discount. A lanky middle-end man yelled from a shabby stall. Imported ores. Buy now and sell later. A fat woman shouted, pointing to the irregular stones in the boxes in front of her. The crowd was walking through the congested and untidy streets as if they were in a hurry. If there was one thing in common, they all bowed their head while walking and wore cheap clothes. There was an aura of gloominess around every single person. He felt angry for some reason, but more than angry, he felt grief. Why? He muttered, maybe for Edwina or maybe for himself. Edwina looked at his disheartened expression and her impression of him improved. Even though he was from somewhere better off, his empathy for the people here were real. Nile family is the head of Uranus and responsible for governing the Uranus cluster cities. Edwina said as they walked through the crowded street. They stepped on the cracked tiles and moved towards the opening of another street. Varian repelled 7 pickpocketing attempts already. Most of the pickpockets were children. He didn't get the heart to reprimand and let them go. Watching them sigh in relief and run away, Varian didn't know what to say. Nile family sacrificed a lot of its powerhouses to help Neptune bear the impact of a two-front war with Pluto and Abyss. The result is this. Edwina said in a complicated tone as she pointed to the buildings across the street. Varian's keen senses caught everything: drugs, prostitution, robbery, money laundering. The more he observed, the heavier his expression turned. Even though such things were heard occasionally, in this day and age, humanity had long overcome the problems. But apparently a section of them still live in destitute conditions. The war-stricken Nile family can't take care of the space cluster cities anymore. We were already poor due to the resources Pluto war drained from us. Then shortly after, with the help of Shadow Order, the gangs sprang up. Now, there are many gangs in Valos. As long they don't overstep some red lines, even the authorities turn a blind eye to their behavior. Edwina sighed. But why do people keep joining the gangs? Without them, the gangs would cease to exist, no? Varian wondered. These people know the horror of gangs firsthand, so why would they join? Edwina closed her eyes in pain and muttered. Poverty induces crime. Crime promotes poverty. People enter gangs to escape poverty. And what they do in gangs make the people poor. Truly a vicious cycle. This won't cost you extra, A/N. Recently, there was a review stating Volume 4 has many fillers. There are no filler chapters in Volume 4 so far, maybe one or at most two. Everything you learn right now might not seem relevant or useful, and some might not make even sense. This happened again and again, starting with Varian's mother's wish, Sia avoiding Varian despite caring for him, and recently, Eric's actions in the banquet, which at that time seemed like author lost his brain. There were some wild comments on that chapter. LOL. But since you read so far, I hope you can trust me a bit more. What you read so far will matter, and it'll become apparent the deeper we go into this arc. P.S. This is the last of the 5 promised chapters. Support the story if you can. Today's the last day. If we reach top 25, trending, monthly, all-time, we'll have a 10-chapter mass release. Varian and Edwina halted in their footsteps as a body passed in front of them and crashed against the wall right next to the small road. Gotcha. The dust rose as pieces of stone, metal, and soil flew out from the crashed site. The men and women scurried off. Since the streets were narrow, and were filled with people, Varian thought stampedes were bound to occur. But everyone moved masterfully, deftly avoiding bumping into each other, and evacuated the street in a few seconds. Varian even saw an old woman using her walking stick to jump over other people. By the aura she emitted, she wasn't even a body awakener. Then there was a kid who hugged the thighs of a muscular man and escaped. What the hell was going on here? Are these people trained agents or something? Casa Brotherhood. Edwina muttered and touched his shoulder. The next moment, they appeared on top of a building a few blocks away from the crash scene. Varian easily made out the silhouette of a man coming out from the broken wall. The man's shirt was torn and dust covered much of his face. Another striking fact of his features was a shark tattoo. He's from the Casa Brotherhood. They're one of the top gangs of the city. Edwina introduced. One of the top, huh? Varian noted that down and went back to observing the fight. The Cosa man wiped the blood dripping down his lips and yelled. One of these days, I'ma kill you motherfucker for good. In response to him, a solid rock flew out and reached his face in the blink of an eye. The man crouched in a flash and looked up in a snarl. You too, bitch? You betray the Brotherhood? The targets of his anger were a scrawny man and a short-haired olive-skinned woman were standing at one of the entrances of the street. I'm a woman, you faggot. I ain't joining no Brotherhood. She yelled and flicked her hand. A spiky thorn made of compact soil was created and shot at the Cosa man. Why you? The man was obviously enraged. With veins popping up on his forehead, he roared and sped up towards her. Each of his steps covered tens of meters, and easily dodging the earth thorn, he reached her in the blink of an eye. I'm still your senior, bitch. With a cold smile, he punched down at the now pale woman. W8. The woman hastily put on an earth wall, but it was swiftly broken under the man's punch. She turned to the man beside her and called out to him in a pitiful tone. Sir, help. Humph. All she got was a cold snort followed by words that were sharper than knife. Your only purpose was to track him. Viper Gang doesn't need any traitors. Die. And she died as the Cosa man punched her face into pieces of flesh and bones. The Cosa man quickly turned to the scrawny man and raised his fist. You too will, huh? Before he could finish his words, his body shuddered as he looked down to see a sword passing through his heart. Cough. Cough. The Cosa man coughed out blood and raised his fist once again in an attempt to hit his enemy one last time. But... Shwa. The Viper man pulled the sword out of his chest and slashed it on his neck. Like a broken foundation, blood spilled out and his headless corpse collapsed, joined the woman's corpse which was in the same condition. The blood spilled everywhere and of course, on the face of the scrawny man. He licked his lips lightly and muttered, "Wonderful." It was only then that Varian observed this man also had a tattoo. It was on his tongue. The tattoo of a viper. This man belongs to Viper Gang. Casso Brotherhood and Viper Gang have been locked in a feud since a year. Edwina said casually and turned to him. Both of them are under the suspect list of Betty kidnappers. You asked why they want to kidnap her, right? Varian nodded lightly, but kept watching the street. The Viper Gang man picked the space rings of the dead, jumped onto a hover bike and drove off. He didn't even bother clearing the corpses. These gangs need resources to grow stronger. And who do they try to kidnap? Every person who can provide those resources. Wealthy businessmen, awakeners that are strong but not too strong, researchers, officials. Varian paused abruptly and arched his brow. Shortly after the man left, people flooded the streets. Someone dragged off the corpses and threw them into a sewer. Then the hawkers started yelling once again. Fresh sea lion tendrils. Special discount. Imported ores. Buy now and sell later. There were bargainings, arguments, and some fights in the street. But no one, not a single soul, mentioned a word of the previous murder. Nor did they speak about the corpses that was floating in the sewer beside the street. There was not a shred of difference from before the murder. What the fuck is wrong with them? Varian felt a sense of alienation. Even though he had seen more deaths on the battlefield, this was something different altogether. What do you mean, what is wrong with them? They're perfectly fine. Edwina was more surprised by his reaction than what happened on the streets. I can understand that they can't intervene or even talk about the gang fights. But come on, I can hear it clearly, even their heart rates didn't change looking at the corpses. This is just abnormal. Edwina raised a brow and considered his question seriously. In the end, she just shrugged. Happens every day. I mean, I just wanted to show you the streets and stuff, but we came across a murder. Well, if you go sightseeing to any place, the chance of encountering something like this is over 50%. Public see this every day and get used to it. And that was when Varian realized he was experiencing the two-word term. Cultural shock. A/N, releases of last 2 days have been halted due to filling private. It's sorted out now. The updates will be normal from the reset. Apologizes for the inconvenience and thank you for your understanding. A few minutes later, a man and woman in green clothes arrived in a vehicle. The man swiftly located the corpses and the woman controlled a bot to collect the corpses and threw them into what seemed like a dumping van. It was only then did Varian's keen senses picked up that there were at least 50 corpses in the van. Oh, new waste collectors? Edwina raised a brow. The old ones bribed their way out of this district, huh? Waste collectors? Think of it like your sanitation workers. For corpses. I forgot, you don't have those. Must be troublesome. Did you really visit Earth or any other planet ever? Varian asked with a serious expression. Well, only once. And of these incidents happened. So I assumed it's a military district. Dear heavens. Varian shook his head. What disturbed him more than the conditions of the city was the way in which people were accustomed to them. They treated it as normal. Even Edwina, someone who knew things like this were wrong and joined Shadow Guardians, couldn't completely see them as abnormal. You'll be on a grind from tomorrow. Try out a meal. I know a good place. Sure. Varian also wanted some quiet space to think about the mission. A good eating place would be perfect. Or so he thought. Hey boss. 3 more servings. Coming. You slob. Why the fuck are you cutting my portion? Stop measuring the portion after eating half. Serve my brother some good drinks or I'll rip your head off. Strong and spicy wine incoming. As Varian and Edwina were seated in a rather classy but boisterous and borderline chaotic restaurant, He realized that there was no such thing as peaceful environment here in Valos. The upside was that they were sitting in a private box on the first floor. The downside was that it wasn't insulated properly, and with his hyper senses, he could hear everything happening in the restaurant. He looked at Edwina, who was enjoying her food with a complicated expression, and asked, "If the Nile family is weak, then what about the local forces? They should at least try to maintain the order, right? This is 520 YAB. Edwina finished the aura-rich steak with relish. Despite looking like this restaurant's head chef could handle level 1 ingredients to make spiritual food. Nile family had vassals in Valos, Weiss family. But they too participated in the war and they're incredibly weakened. Oof, Nile family, despite its problems, can maintain a good grip on Uranus. But Weiss family lost its position and is now replaced by 3 new families. These 3 have connections to the underworld. So, yeah. What about the military? The other side of the city is completely a military base, right? They must have enough power." Varian recalled the first scene of Valos City. A disc-shaped city with residential city on one side and military city on the other. Military? Edwina wiped her mouth and looked at him quizzically. "They're preventing shadow order, the chaos families, and sometimes truly dangerous attacks from the gangs. Their hands are full." Varian sighed and gave up. Valos is what it is. Besides, Edwina continued, if they spend manpower here and something happens in the military base, they'll face severe punishments. And, she raised her voice, but it was filled with desolation. The army did try removing the gangs once. They paid a big price, but they did it. And you know what happened? Naturally, Varian shook his head. Edwina smiled in contempt at her own answer. The gangs sprang up in matter of months. The Shadow Order and the Chaos families are the root. They will keep creating gangs. Varian was about to question about the Chaos families when the door sprang open and a little boy walked in. "Big brother, do you want to order anything more?" The kid was only 10 years old and was wearing worn-out clothes. Varian couldn't speak and simply sighed. "He's full. He really likes it here, Billy." Edwina ruffled the boy's hair and smiled. He. Billy smiled sheepishly and turned to Varian, who simply nodded. "Sister Yumi, thanks for bringing him here." "Oh. How did you recognize me?" "I am wearing a mask, you know." Edwina asked lightly. Indeed, before moving in public, Edwina and Varian wore 2 face masks. They were rather simple, but even level 3 awakeners would find it hard to find the differences. He. "Only you will ruffle my hair and call me Billy," the boy said with a smug smile. "Yumi?" Varian squinted his eyes. So, Edwina was using a fake identity for such occasions. Not unexpected. Fake names. Fake faces. Fake identities. "Big brother, what's your nah?" Boom. Boom. The entrance to the restaurant was knocked open as a green-haired man stepped in. "Boss, this month's protection fee. Are you giving it or should I take it?" the man yelled. There was a clear shark tattoo on his neck indicating his affiliation. Kosa Brotherhood. I was about to visit you, Peter. You just showed up." The restaurant boss, a chubby man with an amicable smile, ran out and presented a small pouch. The green-haired man, Peter, rummaged through the small pouch and frowned. "Why less?" His body exuded a level 2 aura, causing the boss' face to pale. I need a bit for my daughter's mid-school tuit, Pa." A clear slap rang across the restaurant as the boss clutched his swollen cheek. Peter retracted his hand and snorted. "Listen up, you worm. You don't need shit. I protect your restaurant from being trashed. I'm the reason you are able to earn anything." "Why yes. The boss nearly had tears in his eyes, but he kept nodding vehemently. "Now beg me. If I'm satisfied, maybe, just maybe I'll let you off this time." Peter crossed his arms and smirked. This time, his palm covering the cheek was touching a sticky, warm liquid. Boring. Peter shook his head and raised his hand. Please. The boss begged once again. I'll repay you twice the amount. Now we're talking. Peter nodded. Let's see, you're giving me 30% profits and twice of that is 60%, pa. It's 75%, you fool. Peter slapped him again and bellowed. Yes. Whatever you say. The boss didn't fight back. It was useless. At least, it'd be 75% only for 1 month. At least their safety was guaranteed. At least, no one would sell him and his family as slaves. If you try to act smart again, your repayment will double. That's 200%. Peter grinned widely and slapped the boss on the head, causing him to crash onto the floor. He turned around and walked out, his last words lingering in the air. Of course, if it's too costly, you can always sell your daughter. She's young and will make a good thug. The boss laid on the ground for several minutes after the thug was gone and rose to his feet in the next moment. He applied a cream on his cheeks and rushed to the kitchen. Sorry for the delay. Wishes incoming. His voice was still cheerful as if nothing happened. It's just, his swollen cheeks caused some of his words to be muffled. Varian looked at Edwina grabbing his hand and sighed. For some reason, he was tempted to go down and beat up that guy. Earlier, he didn't care about the murder as it was a fight between two gangs and the involved were not innocents. But now, he found it hard to ignore. Edwina stopped him in the last moment. If you interfere, you'll only make things worse. Her words caused him to freeze in his tracks. He could beat up Peter and help the boss and leave safely after the fight. But what about the boss? He's been living here for years. His friends, family and relatives, everyone he knew were living in this city. Varian could change his identities and not worry about being targeted by the gangs, not the boss. After failing to find him, the gang would shift the anger to the boss. Varian freed his hand from her grip and slumped into his chair with an exhausted sigh. He hated this city. But more than the city, he hated people who made it this way. Shadow Order. Chaos families. Don't think too much. They've adapted to this life. Edwina consoled him. Maybe she was consoling herself. Even though she was used to living her, she too knew this was wrong. Adapt? What adapt? Billy looked at them curiously. This was the only way of life he knew. Billy, aren't you enraged by seeing how your boss is treated? Varian asked lightly. Forget Billy, a little child. None of the customers, grown men and women, and some awakeners who were even at peak level 1, didn't voice out their opinions against Peter. I'm very, very angry. I want to kill that son of a bitch. Billy answered honestly. Despite his immature face, his hatred was evident. It's just, Varian was surprised by the language. Well, I can't expect him to not curse after growing up hearing them every day. Then what do you want to do? Varian asked curiously. Billy froze for a second and bit his lip. Then he raised his head and said with determined eyes. I will work hard and enroll into a miracle high school. Varian turned to Edwina. She gave Billy a surprised look and answered. It's a school run by the same board members as Miracle Academy. It's the leading high school of Valos. Oh, then work hard, Billy. Varian gave the boy an encouraging smile. As the door to the private box was opened by Billy when he came in, other customers in the restaurant could clearly hear the conversation. Ha ha ha. This brat? Miracle High School? Give me a break. If he can do it, then Valos will have no murders. Pfft, ha ha ha. Exactly. It's best not to daydream. Do your waiter job properly, kiddo. The restaurant was filled with laughter and taunts. Billy clenched his fists and lowered his head. When I was a kid and said I wanted to be a sovereign, I was treated like this too. Fuck you, public opinion. Varian recalled those days and he felt a surge of anger. Shut up. Grow a pair and dare to dream. At least, this little fellow has more courage than you lot. Varian said lightly, but everyone felt the tremendous aura fluctuations from his body. He only released aura of level 3, yet everyone in the restaurant instantly shut up. The ones who commented earlier started to tremble and prostrated on the spot. Sir, please forgive me. Don't kill me. I will give you all my treasures. I don't have any treasures. But don't kill me, I can sell my organs. Varian was once again taken aback. Even though strength played a vital role in one's standing in the Federation, it wasn't this extreme. On Earth, a level 3 couldn't kill people at will. If you did, you'd be punished properly. Only when you reach high levels do you really start stepping into the zone of beyond rules. Even then, even awakeners of level 9 have some red lines they shouldn't cross or they'd be persecuted. Only sovereigns were treated as above the law. But receiving the same treatment as a level 3, Varian didn't know how to feel. He withdrew his aura and said, "Get out." Yes. Yes. They all smiled and even cried before they scurried out of the restaurant. Varian rubbed his temples and turned to Billy. Billy, don't worry about what they say. Try your best. HM. Thank you, big brother. Billy smiled brightly and said with confidence. I will definitely graduate from the Miracle High School. I must. Oh. What are you gonna do afterwards? Varian asked with a curious expression. I will go to bigger restaurants and collect higher protection fees. Billy raised his head and declared with an aspiring face. Huh. Varian though he misheard. Clap. Clap. Wonderful. I wish my son was also like this. Yes, there are bigger restaurants in Valos. The guys who collect the fees there are far more richer. I heard they even have a big mansion. You really have a big dream, boy. Varian was dumbfounded hearing all the praises showered upon Billy. He could tell from their heartbeat fluctuations and their expressions that most of them weren't lying. They genuinely felt it was an honorable dream. What the actual fuck? You don't want to dream something like abolishing the gangs or fighting the order? He asked in a desolate voice. The restaurants suddenly fell silent. For one, mentioning of the order was usually rare. Second, the content itself. Billy snorted and looked at Varian angrily. Big brother, even though I'm only a kid, don't treat me like a fool. Abolishing gangs? It's impossible. Haha. The expert must be testing you, Billy. Yes, yes. You just passed his test. Even kids know it's not impossible. Maybe he was just messing with you. The voices of the customers flooded in. Varian sighed deeply and looked at Edwina who just shrugged in response. Get used to it. Right. Varian clutched his forehead and nodded. Billy's response really hit home what life in Valos really stood for. Varian felt gratitude for his childhood life on Earth. Despite its shitty problems, it was way better than Valos. If you get into the Miracle High School, find me and I'll give you a big gift. Varian ruffled Billy's hair and his figure blurred. Billy looked at the spot Varian previously stood in shock. So fast. Then he turned to Edwina, she too disappeared. Like always. Boss, the guests of Box B4 left. Billy shouted. Did they pay? Fuck. I forgot to ask. Billy almost peed his pants realizing the consequences. He looked onto the table and sighed in relief. Thankfully. With double tip. Billy's cheerful voice sounded. Thank you for your support. It means a lot to me. Study everything you can. Tomorrow, you will join the university. Of course, Varian diligently put them on table and asked Boo to study them. Rule 1, never do the work you can delegate. Boo, while you're at it, give me the information about Valos gangs and other dark organizations. Varian sat cross-legged on the bed and leaned against the wall. Just a minute, Master. Also, investigate all important recent happenings in Valos City. Well, there's a problem. A lot of things are kept under the rugs. Unlike Earth or other planets, Valos doesn't even have cameras covering the majority of the city. For example, today's murder you witnessed. It's written off as a fighting due to personal grievances. Valos' database stores their identities, but not the reasons for their fights. There is little to no data on why they fought. Varian sighed and waved his hand. Find what you can. Then he tapped on his comm and studied the powers of the city. Even though his mission was only to prevent a kidnapping case, Varian wanted to do more. That motive was only intensified after what he saw today. Billy's answer really made him think. If he wanted to change the situation, he needed more information. First, he started with the history of Valos City. It was prosperous before the war but was always under the harassment of Shadow Order. Shortly after the war, with the weakening of local governing bodies and crumbling economy, Shadow Order lured people and trained gangs. This was the beginning of the nightmare that became a reality. Then there were chaos families, black market. As Varian moved from topic to topic, time passed and he was immersed in the study. Knock. Knock. Until he was interrupted by Edwina. Time to go. I guess. Varian got up from the bed. Miracle Academy was the top institution of Valos City. Despite its crime and poverty, Valos had talented people. Talented and hard-working teens from normal backgrounds sought to join in this academy and secure a bright future. To them, a bright future meant serving in the army and escaping this hell of a city. Of course, most of them didn't know how bad they had it here. Valos had a weird, but all-encompassing censorship enforced by an array of powerful groups. As a result, most citizens don't know much about the Federation's living conditions. But of course, the stronger you are, the easier it is to break the censorship and learn about the real world. The ones who saw bits and pieces of life in the Federation or even heard of those too good to be true tales of life in Federation worked their asses off for the one shot to change their lives. But that's not all. Miracle Academy was also attended by the children of all major powers of Valos. With factions, violence, agendas, and networks, Miracle Academy was in a sense a microcosm of the city itself. And today, the Academy is opening after a mid-semester break. Seriously, how did you do it? Edwina asked Varian with wide eyes. She was dressed in a professional attire, black shirt and professional black skirt. Even black heels. Is every member of Shadow Guardians obsessed with black dress code? Varian asked her in the morning. You're the one to talk. She immediately countered, pointing to his all-white dress. Are there others who are helping you? I am the captain for this mission, why didn't I know? Edwina tapped on the window of the hover car and kept looking at the virtual ID in front of her every 5 seconds. Finally, she turned to Varian and asked again. Just how did you do it? The ID was just ridiculous. Edgar Blanc. Illegitimate son of Mayor Andrew Blanc in Uranus, Umbriel City. Conditions: forced to leave the house as the mayor's legal wife threatened to divorce him otherwise. Without her family's support, he'd lose his post. The fierce mayor loves his post but also his son. So, he sent his son to Valos so that his mistress Edwina can take care of him. If questioned about it, he'd deny having such son adamantly. But should harm befall his son, he'll be enraged and will do everything for revenge. Edwina gave him the ID she prepared. But not even in her dreams did she think that he'd change the ID into a completely new one in a matter of minutes. The scariest part? Even after she used her best connections and had the ID checked, no flaws were found. She almost believed it was his real identity and that he was the mayor's son who was just playing pranks on her. She even called the customer care of Shadow Guardians to complain. Why are you guys teasing me like this? Only after they reassured her he was from Earth did she accept the reality. How? Varian tapped his chin and looked at the curious redhead. Her eyes were sparkling with curiosity. Perhaps if it was a normal man, he would have revealed everything. But Varian simply shrugged and got off the hover car. Secret. W8. Edwina followed, without realizing the dynamic between them had changed. She was no longer the one leading the conversations. Not bad, I guess. Varian commented as he looked at the academy. It was much better than the shabby building he expected it to be. It was a large campus spanning a few hundred acres. There was a large red wall enclosing the perimeter and armed forces every few miles across the red wall. Not only that, Varian could sense some dangerous auras. Level 7s. Even though there were only a couple of them, in a city like Valos, it was enough to prove that security was taken extremely seriously. Don't be surprised. In this city of depravity, if there is a public place with luxury and safety, it's the academy. Edwina said as they walked towards one of the huge gates. To enter, you must undergo a security check. It was a 5-layered check, 3 with bots, 2 with level 5 awakeners. After the customary check, the guard saluted Edwina. Welcome, ma'am. She nodded apathetically. Edwina was a teaching assistant, TA, at the Miracle Academy and also its alumni. At the age of 22, she reached the peak of level 6. After a year of intense training, she's closer to hitting the bottleneck. At the age of 23, her strength was comparable to the top 10 geniuses in the solar trial. But talent-wise, she was far from the likes of Ashtar and Xavier. However, in any planet, she'd be one of the top geniuses. If things went as planned, she'd reach level 7 by the age of 28 at least and 29 at most. Owing to her genius, she had certain privileges within the academy. After graduating as a cadet, she chose to join the academy as TA right away. Thus, her network only strengthened since. That was the reason she was able to bring Varian into the academy without much hassle. Of course, if he was just a level 2 or level 3, she wouldn't be able to do it. Varian showed his college ID. Edgar Blackton. Second-year cadet. Second-year cadet, mid-level 5. The guard looked at Varian's level once again for confirmation and took a deep breath. Genius. Just remember, no killings in the academy. He said cordially and let him in. Kill? Me? No way. Varian laughed it off as he walked in. At least that's how Lilu, the class monitor, felt. Transfer student after midsem? This question was shared by most of the students, but no one asked. They didn't care enough. Introduce yourself, and be seated, there. The professor pointed to a seat right beside a pink-haired girl, causing the boys to gasp in shock. Varian nodded and without an extra word, reached the seat at the back next to the window. Without glancing at the pink-haired girl who was engrossed in browsing her comm, he got seated. You will have a test tomorrow, the professor announced. Some cadets fired up, others deflated. Boo, find information about everyone in the class. Even though the information in a city like Valos was limited, it was still something. And why did he want that information? Varian glanced at Betty with the corner of his eye. It wasn't just him, many boys were peeking at her. But he had no goodwill towards her as others did. In fact, he felt repulsion. Varian wasn't sure at first, but as the class went on, he slowly understood. Betty giggled from time without a care in the world. A cadet not only not paying attention but also disturbing the lecture. And then were her glances. Whenever she glanced at others, there was absolute disdain in her eyes. Especially when she looked at cadets with high-class clothes, cadets from a normal background, there was naked loathing in her gaze. From the bottom of her heart, she considered them inferior to her. Ah! Varian finally understood why he had such a repulsive feeling towards her at first sight. Hate on first sight of sorts. She was exactly like Narcissus. Does every academy have people like this? He wondered. Initially, he was dead serious in stopping the kidnapping. But he was already having second thoughts. He could let her get kidnapped and then save her. At least, she'd get some punishment. Varian. The professor looked at him abruptly, causing Varian to freeze for a split second and set his thoughts on fire. Wait, how? Enigma said this mask can hide from even level 8s. Varian's head spun as he alerted Boo. Be ready. At any moment. Ghost Ship had one teleportation formation. It's a one-off thing, but it could save his life. Varian took a deep breath and looked at the professor with a serious look. I underestimated you, old man. I don't know how you found out my identity, but I'll escape. The price I'm paying is too huge. I'll make you rep. Varian is a first-year cadet who fought second years in the trial and won. The professor shifted his gaze and explained. For real? I call bull. Prof, bad joke. Naturally, no cadet believed him. The professor stroked his long beard and chuckled. Clicking on his comm, he said. Let's see his battle clips first. The battle between Varian and Ari was played out. Ari, sister of Ashtar, was one of the famous geniuses of Neptune. The knowledgeable ones of Miracle Academy knew her strength. To them, she was like a legend. But now, she was defeated. The class fell silent as everyone stared dumbly at the hologram. Varian resisted the urge to facepalm. What I want to show you is his battle forms and combat tactics. The professor paused the video and laid out his analysis. This time, even Betty stopped whatever she was doing and listened carefully. All right, I'll leave it at that. Be prepared for your test. The professor left after those words. The lecture hall got noisy and Varian felt a few intense stares on him. He noted the most intense stares came from two guys. The first was a green-haired handsome young man. With a perfect build and a noble temperament, he looked like a prince. Lilu Grant. Son of the illustrious Grant family. According to his research, Grant was one of the families that recently rose up. They invested in some good businesses and were one of the wealthier families of Valos. The second was from a young man with dirt blonde hair and a medium build. He didn't possess any outstanding features except his eyes. His intense eyes stared at Varian with a warning. Stay away from her. They said. Transferring at a time like this, did your father kick you out? Betty turned to him and asked. Varian ignored her and got into thinking. To kidnap Betty inside this campus was nigh impossible. If the kidnappers were any sensible, then wouldn't even try it inside the academy. Even though Miracle Academy was far weaker than Imperial Defense Academy, it had a few level 8 powerhouses. And in Valos City, level 8 was considered to be near peak strength. Hey, you! How dare you ignore my question? Are you deaf, mongrel? Betty's pink hair swayed as she stood up and glared at Varian. What a stuck-up bitch. Varian resisted the urge to slap her. If she really pushed him to the limits, then that's another matter. To be honest, Varian wanted to show off his strength and cause others to investigate his fake identity. Once they find he's the son of a level 9, even if illegitimate, they'd think thrice before acting on him. Come on, at times like this, there should be some arrogant young masters, no? Varian looked around and saw cadets taking in groups pointing at him. But none of them came to him. TSK. I'm waiting for you, my bait. Propping his chin on his hand, Varian closed his eyes and thought of the situation at hand. If I were the kidnapper, I'd place a spy with Betty. This brat also has powerful bodyguards, but I don't know how powerful they are. Since she's only recently targeted, the spy will try to get closer to her or is in the process of doing it. All I need to do is keep an eye out. If I can find out who's behind the kidnapping, then I can find their motives. Why did so many kidnapping cases rise in Uranus cluster cities? For aura crystals. Aura crystals for what? Is it a treasure? A protection agreement? A weapon? I guess I'll find soon. Hey, faggot. We got a word for you. A rough voice broke Varian's train of thought. Varian's eyes snapped open as he stared at the group of 4 young men and 2 young women staring at him with a malicious smile. They expected him to either freak out or apologize or both. But instead, Varian did something that was completely out of their expectations. He stood up with a smile and strolled out. I know a good place for fights. Follow me. The boy leading the pack was dumbfounded. Wasn't that supposed to be his line? He turned to the green-haired class monitor for guidance. Show him some pain. Lila Grant signaled with his eyes and the group nodded. Following Varian, they reached a rather deserted park on the campus. How did you know this place? The pack leader asked in shock. Was this a prepared attack or something? I made preparations. Varian smiled and raised his fists. Resist too much and it'll hurt like hell. As he said, his aura unfolded onto them. The group of 6 instantly crumbled under his aura. Level 5. They muttered in disbelief. Save your surprises for later, Varian said and appeared in front of the pale 6. Thanks for making my future stay here peaceful. His fist covered in aura reached them in the blink of an eye. I'm not evil. Varian affirmed himself. He played his cards right. In Miracle Academy, being level 5 in the 2nd year was a pretty big deal. So, firstly, no one would try to pick on him. The last thing Varian wanted on this mission was a stupid disturbance from cadets who still acted like kids. But more importantly, the professors, instructors, and even the other organizations whose children studied in the academy would investigate his background. Once they did, they'd not bother him. That's not to say they'd let him do whatever he wanted. If push came to shove, they could hire assassins and blame it on Shadow Order. But it's still risky. Unless he pushed them, they'll keep their distance from him. And that was all Varian wanted. Kick this bastard. You prick. Why don't you drop out? Stop dreaming. Your Weiss family lost. Varian stopped in his tracks and looked to his left. His gaze passed by the large glassy building and locked onto an empty parking lot. 3 young men were beating up a guy of similar age. Boo scanned their identities and Varian instantly understood the gist of the matter. The bullied guy was a member of the Weiss family, a vassal of the Nile family that had now declined. The 3 were from the new families that took over that power and were currently the most powerful families in the city, called New Pillars. Just like their families, they too bullied members of the Weiss family. Talk. You son of a bitch. The boy was kicked in the stomach as he coughed out blood, but he didn't utter a word. He simply stared at the 3 bullies with indifferent eyes. His body was responding to the pain, but his mind was indifferent. Fuck you. The 3rd guy punched him in the face and knocked him out. Duh. His comm beeped and in a few seconds, a few bots came and transferred the fainted guy to the infirmary. TCH. If we can only kill him. It's a strict order from Mayor. That coward. He deserves to be beaten up like this. Varian watched in silence as they slurred abuses at the person they just bullied. Families of these guys should be exterminated. Varian felt a surge of anger but suppressed it quickly. Boom. Boom. Before he could think further, dust rose into the air as 2 silhouettes passed in front of him and crashed into the ground. Gotcha. Varian recognized them to be 2 slender girls. The girl with red hair was covered in flaming armor as she punched with all her strength. She was countered by the girl with blue hair and was bathed in shining water. Boom. Boom. The aftermath of their attacks affected the surroundings and caused the tiles on the ground to crack. Die. Bitch. Right at you. Whore. Varian distanced himself from the mad women and rushed towards the campus exit. Even though bullying existed in Imperial Defense Academy, it wasn't so extensive or so deep. Moreover, private fights were prohibited there. But here, anyone could fight anyone anywhere as long as they don't be killed. Even though he didn't interfere in the fight, Varian did notice their background information. The redhead was the chief heiress of the Nuck gang, while the blue was one for the Soprano gang. These gangs each had a peak level 7 and were locked in a tight fight. So, they too defined themselves as each other's enemies. Seriously, what the fuck is this academy? By the time he reached the exit, Varian saw 10 more fights. Shaking his head, Varian left the academy. He saw Betty in the distance. She got into a luxury hover car and shot off. There were 2 escort cars protecting her at any moment. "Boo, can you lock her position?" Varian asked. "I can lock her comm, but they'll remove it the moment they try to kidnap her." "No worries. Just track her. Also, track the comms of every guy in the class." Varian got into a cab and headed to a lavish hotel. Once his identity as the mayor's son was found out, it's no longer suitable to stay with Edwina. So, Varian picked a high-end hotel and spent money like water as he picked the King's Suite. After entering the King's Suite, he did the daily task of using his mental power to move a bit of the fog covering his memories. "Master, we have a problem," Boo informed him. "What's that?" Varian arched a brow. "People in Valos, especially those in high positions, are constantly spied upon. So, they don't use comms. They use alpha orbs." Alpha orbs. Varian's brows knit together. These things worked primarily abyssal technology. Though they didn't replace comms, if sensitive information was only sent through alpha orbs, then Varian wouldn't be able to gain any useful info. "I can still track anything they do through comm, but alpha orbs, it's very hard." Boo lowered its head and confessed in a low voice. "Don't worry too much, Boo. Just do what you can." Varian consoled it, but he was already thinking of how to solve the issue. Till now, Varian relied on Boo's ability to gather information and hacking and used them to his great advantage. But Valos City didn't have a proper database or surveillance to gather information from. Boo couldn't hack the alpha orbs. Not yet, at least. While Varian spent the night trying to find a solution, the Miracle Academy forum was on fire. "Edgar. The new genius. He's gonna shake the rankings. Second year level 5. How rare these are. He's already top 10 in the second year." After praises, questions naturally arose. But who is he? Why is he here? Except for a few, no one knew. And the ones that didn't speak out. Until one spoke of a rumor. He is the son of a very high-ranking officer of Uranus. Of course, Varian was the one that leaked the rumor. His plan worked, and the next day, no one came to bother him. The test began, and Varian also found the opportunity to find the spy. As Awakeners, and especially Awakeners in a city like Valos, the people here had a deep respect for strength. After a brief written test, the cadets were taken to a dungeon floating outside the Valos city. Spy. Mid-dungeon. The second years were asked to raid the dungeon and collect the magic beast cores. The ranking was based on cores, and thus, the practical test commenced. Despite his strength, Varian didn't act out of line. He simply slaughtered a couple low-level 5 beasts and exited the dungeon. After an hour, the test ended. "I will announce the rankings now," the instructor, wearing a gray military uniform, said out loud. The second-year cadets stood in a square formation as they awaited his words. Just kidding, they were sprawled all over the place as they discussed their exploits, bragged about their fights, or simply rested after the exhausting fights. Disciple, discipline. Varian was appalled by their behavior. "Wait, I'm the one to talk. I was late for my academy on the first day. But still, how could these boys and girls be soldiers who'd defend others?" To his relief, Varian found a small subsection of people standing straight and waiting for the announcements. Light in darkness. Darkness in light. 10th place. Khalida. 9th place. Biance. It was the red-haired girl and blue-haired girls that fought yesterday. The blue-haired girl, Biance, raised her head in a smug smile and flipped a middle finger to Khalida, the redhead. Varian took a breath and checked their levels. Since they weren't experts at hiding their aura, he could even see their specific sublevel. Khalida. Low level 5. Fire path. Biance. Low level 5. Water path. 8th place. 7th place. Varian found all of them to be low level 5. Then came the 3 guys who were beating up the Weiss family boy. The young masters of the new pillar families, 6th. 5th. 4th. The 3 young masters were absolutely flabbergasted. As the children of Valos' most powerful families, they weren't even in top 3, damn it. Varian facebombed internally. I just swung my sword a couple of times and returned. I should have held back more. 3rd place. Edgar Blackn. The instructor announced, and his gaze landed on the transfer student. According to the investigation, this silver-haired boy's background was big. But since he was forced to live in Valos, his strength wasn't enough. Even level 5 is not enough? Are our standards too low, or are their standards too high? He wondered. At the same time, the crowd began to chatter about his rank. If it was yesterday, someone would have jumped out and said something like, "He must be cheating. I am ABC young master. There's no way I can lose to a nobody like him." But after watching Varian's show of strength, no one questioned him. Being high profile also had its uses. Varian looked at the 3 young masters who were now glaring daggers at him. But after thinking for a while, they didn't attack him. Second. Viner Hardy. It was the dirt blonde-haired guy from yesterday. Viner Hardy. Mid-level 5. Lightning path. What? According to Boo's investigation, this guy had no prominent background. Even though you could succeed despite not having a background, the boost it provided wasn't negligible in the early stages. So how? Varian's surprise wasn't to end there. First, Lila Grant. The green-haired man smiled elegantly and turned towards the pink-haired girl next to him. I told ya. You're mid-level 5 already? Betty exclaimed. Her words caused everyone to perk their ears. They also wanted to know the truth about Lilua's true level. After all, he was only low level 5 before the mid-sem break. Lilu looked at the shocked faces of his peers and his lips curled up. Of course. I went to Soul of Planetoid and fought hard to advance. After saying, he raised his arm and showed a scar on his wrist. This is still healing, but it's from a high level 5 abyssal. I barely escaped. Hiss. The cadets gasped at his words. Fighting in a planetoid. Escaping from a high level 5. Their feelings towards him changed from envy to respect. Even Betty looked at him with a friendly smile. You're so good. I really doubt it. Varian wanted to say, but didn't. Lila Grant. High level 5 Morpher Path. For Miracle Academy, this was an unusually high strength. So, Varian had a strong reason to suspect this guy was a spy. But Grant family was entrenched in the Valos city for decades. Why would they send their young master to be a spy? Besides, he was always studying at this academy. Perhaps he hid his strength because it's too high and he didn't want to be targeted. Perhaps. Boo, can you check the records of Soul of Planetoid? Varian decided to exploit the information. Yes. Unlike Valos, all planetoids have a solid database. Good. Check Lilua's records during the break. Varian instructed. After a minute, Boo informed. Master, he did enter the Soul of Planetoid. Varian frowned. Then is he innocent? But, Boo raised its voice. Finish everything in a go. Why yes. He only stayed on the planetoid for an hour. And he didn't fight. He just patrolled in one of the safe areas. There weren't any fights in that area during the day. Wait, what? Varian said out loud, causing cadets to turn towards him. I got a call to pick. He gestured and broke away from the crowd. No one stopped him. It was normal in here. Master, he stayed on Sola for 1 hour, returned in 1 hour. Then attended the academy yesterday right away. Varian sighed lightly. This pretty much concluded everything. Even if he advanced, he'd need more than 1 hour to sort out the process. Not everyone was like Varian, who advanced in a matter of seconds. Lilu would need at least a couple hours, but he had. Varian looked at Lilu, who was chatting and laughing with Betty, and narrowed his eyes. So you're the one. The second years returned to the campus and an instructor gave a final announcement. We'll have a military base tour tomorrow. And also, inter-academy competition the next week. We'll select teams based on the performance. Now, disperse. Varian left the lecture hall and was about to take the elevator when he heard 2 familiar names. Lilu, why the fuck are you trying to get close to Betty? The deep voice was full of rage. I like that chick. You got a problem? An elegant voice answered frivolously. Fuck you. She's my girl. Yours? She looks down on commoners like you the most. It's due to her trauma. You don't know her. I do. I know her since childhood. Listen up, Viner, the only reason you're able to talk to me is because I'm letting you. I know you're also a mid-level 5, but so what? Do you really think we're equals? Don't make me laugh. I never thought we're equals. I have a level 8 tutor. Our backgrounds are equal. But I lived a normal life for 16, I was far behind you. Yet I caught up. Viner said with a complacent and arrogant smile. Why you? Trash. Lilua's face distorted and he walked away from the blonde guy. Varian quietly observed them with his keen senses. Viner also left after cursing Lilu a few times. Lilu is really living his role as a mid-level 5, huh? Varian rubbed his chin. But the anger doesn't seem to be completely fake. He was genuinely mad that Viner caught up with him. Varian was confused about his Lilua's true motivations, but he already had an important inference. After getting back to his temporary residence in the hotel, he entered a make-do study room in Ghost Ship and wrote down 2 points on the white wall. 1. Betty will be kidnapped outside the campus. 2. Lilu is getting closer to Betty and is a spy. Then he got to thinking. Where was the perfect place for kidnapping Betty? From the information Edwina gave him, Betty frequents beauty saloons, high-end clubs and other areas, but she's always under protection. I don't have any leads on this. Varian shook his head and focused on the next point. Perhaps it could give him more clues. Lilu Grant. Grant family was one of the illustrious families of Valos. Varian initially thought they were clean, but he realized he misunderstood this city. If even Grant family did things like this, then perhaps all families in Valos were more or less connected to the underground. This is just insane. But it made sense. In a city where underground forces reigned supreme, you couldn't rise to the top without doing some shady things. However, all families wanted to maintain a virtuous demeanor. So, they kept their dark sides hidden. Grant family was one of the foremost donators to the slums. He should have gotten the hint. Boo, go to the Grant family. Varian said after taking a deep breath. Grant family's manor was located away from the rather populous and bustling districts. Along with a few more wealthy families, they bought out a whole district as their private estates. Grant family wasn't the strongest family in Valos, but they sure were first-rate and would be in the top 20. They ran a fund and invested in local businesses. There was a local saying that, if the Grants pick your business, even you can't stop the money from flowing in. That was as far as what the public knew. What they didn't know was that Grant family's main business was intelligence. Grant family ran a notoriously hidden intelligence organization called Obsidian. They cultivated spies, stole secrets, sold the data and of course, used their loot to their own benefits. In the era where information was everything, they exploited their advantage to the fullest and expanded rapidly. While every power had spies, Obsidian was on another level. No one knew for certain how many normal students, workers, employees belonged to Obsidian. But what was certain was that every business they invested was used for Obsidian. The man who controlled this vast network was Thomas Grant. At the moment, he was tending to the fish in his backyard's pond. Eat. Eat. He smiled as he sprinkled red meat across the pond. As the fish scrambled for the meat pieces and formed clusters, he smiled in satisfaction. Their intense fight to grab the meat only made him smile wider. Soon, pillars of water rose into the air due to their fighting. Thomas cursed the fish killed in the fighting. Feeding fish was his only normal hobby. But neither the pond or the fish were normal. To put things perspective, the pond was something like a quarter of a football field. Each of the fish were 3 feet long and were capable of killing an unawakened adult human. And the meat he fed them was from one of the geniuses that Obsidian killed a few days ago. It was a cheerful girl who had a loving family. They just needed her to spy on her teacher. They threatened her with her family and she agreed. But at the last minute, she spilled out everything to her teacher. Things almost went out of control, but thankfully, their countermeasures were in place and quickly ended the lives of the girl and her family. "Dad, you're still at this feeding thing again?" An elegant yet deep voice sounded from behind. Thomas didn't turn but simply laughed. "If you feed a genius to fish, will the fish become genius? I was curious since childhood. Should I be freaked out at this?" Lila shrugged. He didn't feel the same emotions as others. For him, this wasn't something to fuss about. And Thomas liked that in his son. "Don't you have any such curiosities yourself?" "I do have one curiosity." Lilu sat beside his father. Why did the Shadow Order, no, the Abyssals suddenly thrown that into the black market? Wrong question. Thomas slapped him on his head. "It's beyond our reach, and if we're found searching for it, the spy network I built over blood and sweat will be destroyed overnight." Lila nodded, but his face showed clear dissatisfaction. Thomas shook his head. "Forget about Shadow Order and Chaos families. Be ambitious, but keep it to Valos City. We still need to grow." "Lilu, what problems do you think we'll face due to the current market?" He wanted to teach his son the mindset needed to be Obsidian's leader. In all the cities, kidnapping cases rose because of that thing in the black market. So, the Federation must have noticed things are fishy and sent their agents. Athena agents would be after us, damn. Lilu jumped onto his feet realizing the danger. Thomas's face darkened. As an intelligence organization, they hated the biggest intelligence organization, Athena. They're troublesome, but they're not here to stop kidnappings, they want to find out why they rose. They must have already found out about that thing and are fully busy finding Abyssal's motives. We aren't their targets. Take it easy. Thomas reassured him. Lilu heaved a sigh of relief. Then his thoughts spun and he asked. "Speaking of easy, our clients, are they sure to kidnap Betty? She has a Space Awakener as her bodyguard for fuck's sake. It's not something we need to worry about. Just follow the action plan." I'm in the phase of getting closer to her. She agreed to hang out with me later tonight." He smirked. "Any obstacles?" Thomas asked casually. There were few that could stand as Grant's equals and fewer above them. Lilu had no big enemies in the academy. There should be no obstacles anyway. 1. Lilu gave an unexpected answer. "Oh." Thomas smiled and waved his hand. "Viner or the newcomer Edgar?" "Viner." Lilu said honestly. "At first, I thought Edgar was a spy, but his identity, it makes him anything but a spy. Moreover, he doesn't talk to anybody and he already pissed off Betty. Viner, though, he's trying to get close to Betty." Want my help? Viner's master was one of the few level 8s in Valos and was only slightly weaker than Thomas. But if he really willed it, Thomas could kill Viner's master. But the price would be sky high. However, he could always kill Viner without much repercussion. No. Viner loves Betty, but I know how to make her love me. I'll win her trust. It'll all be over in a week anyway. Lilu stood up and walked off. When he was about to exit, Thomas suddenly said, "One advice, son." Lilu turned around. Watch out for shadow guardians. Along with Athena agents, they've also penetrated the Uranus cluster. The Chaos families issued a notice. Unlike Athena agents, they are trying to stop the kidnappings. Thomas said lightly. He was really worried, but after finding out how Shadow Guardians assassinated the son of Sovereign Julius, he started paying more attention to them. Still, their range of activities were far away on Earth. Nothing to be panicked about. Shadow Guardians? Lilu sneered. They think this is still Earth? Don't worry, Dad. They don't even dare to stand in front of me. Ironically, a new recruit of Shadow Guardian was standing in front of him. Did I just crack my mission? Varian muttered. It's just the third day.